told me that Abigail Lee was accepted at Yale and Stanford. Very proud of you. Very, very proud of you. I just had to say it. That's right. That's just beautiful. Just beautiful. So everyone, my name is Scott Schmerlson, and I'm the board member for Board District 3. And before we begin this meeting, I have a few announcements and housekeeping items to share. And I appreciate the members of the public who are able to join us in person and via Zoom. And as accustomed, we'll be taking public comment towards the end of the meeting. And now I would like to turn it over to Mr. McLean, Board Secretariat, so he can provide more details on where our audience can go to live stream this meeting and sign up for public comment.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike McLean. I'm the Executive Officer of the Board of Education, and one of my jobs is to make sure that everything that we do here gets out to you in the best way possible. So in order to do that, we have what's called a website. And you can go to this website by going to boe.lausd.net. That's B as in board, O as in of, and E as in education.lausd.net. And there you will find live stream links to the meeting that is happening right now. And you will also, under the calendar function, find the materials associated with any given meeting on any given day on which there is a committee or a meeting. We post the agenda 72 hours in advance of the committee or the meeting, and we post the materials as soon as we possibly can, usually also 72 hours or more in advance. Following the meetings, there will be sometimes more information there if you're interested in more information. And you can always email us following the link on the boe.lausd.net. Thank you.
So I would also like to thank my own staff, mainly Sylvia Martinez back there, for assisting us in preparing today's materials, as well as Mr. McLean and his district staff and his team for organizing this meeting, the logistics, the translation unit, and the IT. It takes a lot of people to put a meeting together. And a quick reminder before we start, we will be taking all questions towards the end of each presentation. There are 2 presentations today. In addition, in order to be compliant with the Brown Act, we will not be discussing any items that have not been properly agendized for today's meeting. So, before we get started with the first presentation, let me just mention that these topics are very dear and near to my heart because when I visit my schools, I always make sure that we have a warm and welcoming environment for our students and family. And that's the reason I am so eternally grateful to the front office staff for making people feel welcome when they come to the school. I tell them every time I visit, ladies and gentlemen, you make it or you break it for the school, just with how you act when parents come in. So it's very, very important to me. So that's our first topic. With that said, I hope that anyone watching is able to learn as much as I have from these presentations. So let me, 1 minute. Our first presentation will be a collaboration from the various divisions, family and community engagement, student health and human services, and nursing services. And it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Antonio Plasencia, who will introduce the team and get us started with the first presentation. So take it away and let's have a warm and welcoming greeting. Thank you.
That is right. And so we are just delighted to be with you this evening because while we are starting this conversation to talk about the work of, student, family, and community engagement, as you're going to see here, serving our families in fostering a welcoming environment links students, parents, and the diversity of families that we have at Los Angeles Unified. And it takes many hands to offer that welcoming environment because, as parents, our big sort of like fractured relationship or moment is when we transition our little ones from the home and drop them off on the first day of school. I was able to see a parent drop off their young scholar at an elementary school this week coming into the district, and you feel that heart-on connection. And so the work that our school sites do just collectively is admirable. To help us frame what welcoming environment looks like at Los Angeles Unified, We do have structures in place to support welcoming school environments. We're going to be talking to you about various strands that connect from the social emotional, the wellness, family engagement, and the overall health needs of our families. Today's presentation, I'll be joined today by, by Joel Cisneros, our interim administrator, a brother in an office that we work very closely with Pia Escudero, done some wonderful work just to embrace our families as a whole, and Solce Bedrosian, the director in district nursing services, that are going to share that full circle, a flavor of welcoming environment in our schools. Next slide. So we want to begin by talking a little bit about the spaces that foster welcoming environment. As you'll see here, we have our main offices at schools, but really the welcoming environment begins when you're driving up to the curve, right? We try to really think about our schools being community spaces and blurring that line from the sidewalk, from the campus to the streets of our community. So our main offices and through our valets, we have personnel to our family and student needs. They're like the direct link. In order to access the campus, that is a space for anyone that might be new to our public education system of connecting with our families, for connecting our families to our schools. Parent and family centers. We have to give Los Angeles Unified credit that we have about 97% of our school sites have a space for families to come together, learn, and build community. And that is essential, because when you're getting to know your teachers, the spaces, it's valuable to have a space where you can get assistance, have workshops, get assistance one-on-one. And we have to call out the fact that we have wonderful partnerships. In addition to our wellness centers, we have our well-being centers. With LA County Department of Public Health, some of our school sites have a hybrid clinic, a learning space where students and families get to access additional information. Families will always say, where do I get these health services? So we've added this QR code for you here at home. For those of you that are with us here today, put your camera over it and it will give you the webpage to Student Health and Human Services where you're able to explore those services, because welcoming environment shows we're also mindful of the needs of the health needs of our families. So in these spaces, who is there to serve? In our main office, we have our SAAs, right? We have our office technicians, the administration. And what I love about LA Unified is that all of these offices have a label where you know where the principal's office is, you know where the nurse's space is, the assistant principals, where their little office is located, and other support personnel. And that office is that space of triaging. If you see us smiling, how do we receive you? If we see that you're not very happy or something's going on, how do we take care of you? Parent and family centers. This is the unit of work that our office gets to support in addition to our regional administrators of family engagement. We have various positions that were established since the civil rights movements to integrate our school communities. Our community reps, they are it's like that soul, that spirit in our school community. They think about the wraparound needs, from developing a school calendar for workshops, activities, and events. How do we link dual language literacy nights that bring in culture? How do they bring in resources from the community? They're very valuable. And what I get to really see now at our school sites through the work of student health is that we have student and family wellness navigators that essentially are developing different hubs of linking to one another to curate services for our families. Our well-being centers and our wellness centers, these are very unique spaces because oftentimes when families see our seal, they feel like it's a trusted entity. So if you're a newcomer, maybe a new American in our communities, or whether you're thinking about how do I ask questions about health that I'm not comfortable asking elsewhere, our families come to us, and it's the richness of LA Unified that you can go to Monroe, Jefferson High School, you can address your students' academic needs and also find a clinic. You can go to Maywood Academy and find a well-being center in the campus that supports the learning. So these are some spaces that we wanted to connect you to because they really build that sense of safety and well-being for our families. Family engagement. In the area of family engagement, we have sort of 3 different strands of family engagement that we support and that are linked within our strategic plan today. We have Title I, which speaks to the role of councils, committees, and what we call that supplemental engagement. Title I is when we think about an ice cream sundae, everyone gets the ice cream scoops. Title I gives you the sprinkles, the cherry, that fudge, the additional complementary support. It was established through the civil rights movement, and it was the movement that started to get us from opportunity and moved us over to equity. We have our state funding, which is through the local control and funding formula and plan, and we have aligned that to our strategic plan. And so what are some of the supports for welcoming environment in our schools? Well, we have our councils and committees. We have 2 distinct councils and committees at our school sites. For those that are Title I schools, they establish a school site council where families, secondary students, teachers, administrators, and school personnel come together to discuss what are the assets, needs, what is the data telling us, and how do we build a North Star of equity and using investments to accelerate learning for our students, interventions, preventions, and family engagement. The English Learner Advisory Committee at the school site level, they specifically have comments and recommendations around the master plan to the school, and they give comments to the school site council. So within our strategic plan, that is a strand in Pillar 3 around honoring perspectives and how they become integrated in the cycle of continuous improvement at our schools. So that is how we harness the voice of families that want to engage through that means. Our workshops and coffee with the principal. Our spaces for cafecito, coffee is very warm, and LA Unified is very much continue to embrace that space of inviting families to have a two-way dialogue, learn about the Safe School Plan, talk about how to build safer entrances and exit for our students, talk about what are going to be the big milestones we want to achieve and plan for the year. And these are spaces to build community and see how our school leaders are aligning supports for families and incubating that welcoming environment. Our workshops. Our school sites at a minimum offer 1 family engagement activity per month through our state responsibilities in our LCAP. We ask our principals to document that, and so that might be a workshop through a partner that is funded to come in and maybe do a 7 to 9 segment series. It might be a Healthy Start Navigator or a neighborhood clinic talking about vaccination, or just health services, how do you get Medi-Cal, Medicaid, immigration rights, a variety of topics that are made available to our families. School volunteer program. Our school volunteer program is one of the most organized systems. We have a volunteer management system, and to date we're at about 13,000 volunteers that have returned to LA Unified. The pandemic saw a really big drop in volunteerism, but this year we have surpassed last year's mark of 5,000, and we're at 13,000 processed volunteers. They serve valet at our school sites, classroom parents, campus opportunities, and it also includes the role of our parent organizations, PTA, PTO, and boosters coming in to incubate and supplementing the support of our school sites. As you see here, they support fundraising, enrichment, and learning services. One element that I'm very proud of, and I'm very grateful to the Personnel Commission and Human Resources, is that under the leadership of Ileana Davalos, for the first time in my 13 plus years in the district, we're aligning set professional development for various pipeline positions that support welcoming environment. So one thing that I want to highlight is that at our school site, our Title I policy sort of speaks to providing school site teams with professional development through our Title I and our LCAP strategies on welcoming environment, thinking about how we engage and take that the parent-teacher conference to the next level. So that is the baseline sort of a training that we offer at the school site. Parent and family centers receive monthly learning facilitated by our region, parent and community engagement teams. So they meet every month where they learn about volunteerism, welcoming environment, what are the wraparound services available to bring into the parent center, how do we outreach and engage families, a variety of topics that align for those parent centers to support families with the various services that we make available. To that said, we also have in our regional offices, we have 4 regional offices now, and we have 4 regional family and community engagement teams. They have an administrator, parent educator coaches, facilitators, and community reps. And they are the ones that offer professional development and guidance around welcoming environment and our strategic plan initiatives to our school site designees for family engagement. They're the ones that oftentimes also address concerns, individual family needs. So really it's about curating and coordinating services for families and for our schools. So that's one element of the professional development alignment that we wanted to speak to you in the area of welcoming environment. As I shared, our strategic plan is very much not only in pace with the national research of family engagement, but taking it to the next level. This is an example of a Region South Parent and Family Center workshop training for our community reps on how to develop Title I aligned workshops. It's helping our school site parent and family personnel leads learn how to take a brochure, pamphlet, resources, and then develop a workshop so that they develop that comfort, that ease of presenting learning to families. On my right here, you'll see that we work very closely with Human Resources. They have an aspiring assistant principal program, an aspiring principal program, and we participate every year to give the baseline basics of how do you build engagement that goes beyond compliance. Compliance is there to respect the rights of our families, but we speak to them around how do you build a really motivated, very much strong culture of family engagement. And so this is valuable work. It's aligned to our school leadership framework, and it helps our school leaders now understand what is family engagement, because currently our credentialing process for teachers and administrators does not include family engagement. There's one like dual language or English learner credential you can get that includes family engagement. So we're working with Human Resources to embed this level of development into the pipeline leadership of our certificated classifications. So this other area for our parent and community engagement teams, we work with them to align welcoming environment support in addition to some of the other areas that I spoke to you about, which include council and committee formation, school volunteers, parent portal, workshops engagement, our family engagement policy and compact. But what I would want to highlight here within our strategic plan is that we have started to work on developing professional development summits. And I'm going to show you an example of what that looks like. So what does that mean? We are preparing our regional offices to consistently invite the principal supervisors to lead in the training and development of school site teams. So our regional offices are organizing professional development summits, where we see here on my left-hand side, that is Superintendent Huerta speaking to his school site administrators and teams about the mission and responsibility of family engagement. In the second item there, you will see Mr. Rome, who is a COSA administrator, leading a training on budget transparency and collaboration. The third one is around our keynote, where we have been speaking to them about how do we go from, one-way engagement to two-way engagement that really values dialogue and discourse. And on the right side in West, you'll see pictures of celebrating schools who have grown significantly in the area of family engagement. We attempted to do this work in 2016. It's now within our strategic plan today. And so that includes community reps, assistant principals, office staff to come together to talk about how do we foster a culture that embraces families as partners. And I'll wrap up with highlighting that in addition to our aspiring programs, with Human Resources, we're going to be developing a course sequence for principals on how to organize essentially family engagement that inspires and creates greater connections from the home to the school, and helping our schools connect from the school site back to the home. Some of our families do not engage in our schools for a variety of factors on equity, and we want to help think about ways of home visits and other ways to accelerate engagement beyond families coming to us. And the last item, I want to thank my team and Human Resources, because we are establishing a micro-credential. The culture of micro-credentials is that they're usually for teachers. We are developing the first team-based micro-credential in the nation on family engagement, where parent and family center personnel, teachers, certificated teachers, and administrators will be able to get a certificate from a university where they go through the process of really reimagining and rethinking what effective equity-minded family engagement looks like in our schools. We expect to have our first cohort going live next year. It's within our strategic plan, but there's a lot of hype around this nationally because LA Unified will be establishing the first team-based approach to this work by working with all of our partners. So that is a flavor of the supports for family engagement. And before I transition it over to my colleagues in Student Health and Human Services and Nursing, want to align this back to our strategic plan. Our strategic plan essentially gathers the voices not only of the engagement work that we led within our 100-day plan, but it also incubated voices during the pandemic where we saw that involvement changed from being in-person to hybrid, right? So we have our 4 areas of our priorities, and really the piece of welcoming environment falls in strong relationships and honoring perspectives. When a family is coming to you asking about questions about their concerns of the instructional program, when families are saying, I need health needs or supports, that is where welcoming environment comes into shape, because when we offer that quality customer service, families want to continue being with us. Our strategies, the strategies that I just presented to you in the previous slides, those are embedded in this slide here. Because like I said, our Title I work, state LCAP work, and our strategic plan are coherent and aligned in my sort of journey here at LA Unified in the area of family engagement. And lastly, we have direct measures that we're working on to support family engagement, the school experience survey being a leading indicator for welcoming environment. So with that, we're going to transition over to District Nursing Services to speak on the tenets of health in the area of welcoming environment. We'll be back for questions as well.
Good evening. Thank you for having me today. My name is Sose Bedrosian, and I'm the Director of Nursing Services. So I want to talk to you a little bit about school nursing today and all the array of services that we provide, many of which are mandated or required by the Education Code. This includes vision screenings, hearing screenings, oral health screenings, immunization compliance, health office visits, health education and anticipatory guidance, including health education, specialized physical health care services, which are also known as health protocols, and these are our students with specific health needs, such as gastrostomy tube feedings, catheterizations, diabetes, and medication administration. Each year, annually, we find a lot of students who have hearing and vision deficits, and there'll be some data on that later in the presentation, that we find, obviously, if our children cannot see or hear, they're going to have inability to learn. My apologies. We have various special programs in nursing services, and this includes an asthma program, a nurse-family partnership program, which works with first-time pregnant youth and their children and follows them from the time of the child's birth to the time that they turn 2 years old. We have a communicable disease prevention program that works with LA County Department of Public Health. And the very most recent example of that is during the COVID pandemic. We worked very closely with the county to make sure that our schools were free of communicable diseases. We have school wellness centers that Mr. Placentia mentioned, at which we provide immunizations and vaccinations to students of our district, as well as their siblings, as well as teachers or staff who are interested in getting the COVID vaccination. We have an adolescent health condom availability program at our high schools where we provide condoms to students. It's an opt-out program, so any student who's interested in that can participate as long as their parent hasn't opted out. We provide CPR and AED, which is an automated external defibrillator training classes to our community. We provide it to staff, students, family members, anyone who's interested in being certified in CPR AED. We have an oral health program where we visit students and look at their mouth and their teeth and make sure that their mouths are healthy and they don't have any dental cavities or caries. And we have a Queens Care Vision and Dental program, which comes onto our campuses with a mobile clinic and provides vision and dental screenings right on the spot and provides glasses to students who may need them. And there was a question about nursing time at schools. I wanted to just let you know that all schools have they're supposed to have a full-time nurse, but unfortunately, due to the shortage, they do not always have a full-time nurse, but all schools do have nursing time. Albeit that may be a day a week, but they do have nursing time, and anyone who's interested can check with the site administrator or the SAA to find out who that individual is. A lot of times when the nurse is not there every day, people don't know who that individual is, but the principal or the SAA can help support with that. Also, the nurse has a mailbox at the school, and you can leave a message for that individual in their mailbox. And some schools also have what's known as a licensed vocational nurse who work under the supervision of the credentialed school nurse to provide specific health needs such as diabetes, again, tube feedings, and other specialized procedures. And our LVNs travel from one school to another to help support our students with specific health needs. And to cover some of the data I talked about earlier, our vaccination compliance rate presently district-wide is 96.5%. And the reason that's not 100% is we do have some students who are exempt from immunizations because they may have a medical condition that exempts them from receiving vaccinations. You can see that to date, this data is to date, year to date. We've completed over 104 vision screenings, over 140,000 hearing screenings, and usually 10% of those numbers, so you can see about 10,000 students have vision deficits and 14,000 students have hearing deficits, and we have programs for those students. We do health assessments for IEPs. We've had over 500,000 health office visits to date. We've administered almost 78,000 doses of medications at our schools, and we've completed over 429,000 protocols, which are what I spoke to earlier. And then each area, we haven't transitioned to the regional model yet, but each area has a nursing administrator who oversees that local district, and you can see them listed by local district with their email and their phone number, and they can always be contacted if the nurse is not there at the school that day or the parent has any specific health needs or questions, they can contact their local district nursing office. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Mr. Cisneros.
Well, good evening, committee members. Joel Cisneros with Student Health and Human Services. Glad to be here this evening. And I'm going to walk you through the entry point to Student Health and Human Services, and particularly to mental health. So really the best way to access services through Student Health and Human Services is really starting with our Student and Family Hotline. It is a running number that operates Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, and it really was something that was created during the pandemic. And what we found was it was critical that we were connected with families and gave that opportunity for families and students and staff to be able to reach out and connect with someone with our staff. If a family member or a parent or a student or even a staff were to call this line, they can expect to have on the other side a mental health professional. Also, we have other Student Health and Human Services professionals such as student and family resource navigators that can assist families with a myriad of needs, whether it be enrollment in health insurance or access to food resources, or if there's like rent assistance. Really, this is the entry point. So I really want to make sure that our families and our students really have access to this number. Year to date, we've received over 13,000 calls, so we know it's a resource. I know families are using it, and so we're really, really happy to have this in place. And then as we dive into the school mental health world, or the mental health services that are available to our students and families across the district, This really is a snapshot, and it doesn't do justice of all the complexity, but it's really a snapshot of the various overarching departments and programs within school mental health. And I'll just quickly go through it and can answer more questions. But really the core of our program with school mental health is our school-based PSWs. I know over the years, well, we've talked a lot about that, and that really is the core services that are being delivered. And so we right now have those PSWs throughout schools, supporting in a myriad of ways. We also have PSWs supporting students that have educationally related intensive counseling services as part of their IEP. So that's part of the services that we have a team dedicated to that as well. We have a whole team just dedicated for crisis. We know as the second largest district in this country and the largest in California, we see a lot of crisis, unfortunately. And what we have staff in there ready to be deployed and support school sites and, most important, students and families in the aftermath of a critical incident. We also, thanks to a partnership also with LA County Department of Mental Health, we've been able to launch an early childhood mental health PSW program where we have PSWs dedicated to work in the early childhood space. It's very unique, as all of you know that have been around kids that are 0 to 5. They're lovely, they're wonderful, but they have very unique needs. And so we have dedicated staff that are trained to support these early childhood years. We also have been able to hire and recruit PSWs very specifically for our Black Student Achievement Plan, and we have staff dedicated there. So very excited and fortunate to be able to do that, leading the nation again with such type of dedicated investments and dedicated mental health staff. And then lastly, we do have mental health clinics and wellness centers that are operated by the district in partnership with other community partners, and we do have clinics throughout the district where staff can access services for mental health services. What I wanted to also share was here essentially our administrative infrastructure by the region offices, and these are the individuals. If you're a community member, if you're a staff member, and you're saying, I want to find out, do I have a PSW at my school site? And these would be the individuals that you can contact. These are the individuals that can also help you answer questions around mental health, or if you're wanting some sort of workshop or presentation, whatever it may be, these are the individuals or leaders in the field helping lead these efforts. And then lastly, I know I mentioned the wellness centers earlier. It's really a resource there for our students and family. It's free of service. We are very fortunate to actually have our own dedicated child psychiatrist in-house. That is a very interesting concept, that we are able to provide medication support for those students and families that opt into it, and if they meet the diagnosis and the parents agree, et cetera, we have that resource for students and families. And this is short-term mental health treatment. We have a very well-rounded source of partnerships also through the county, through the city, where we do refer mental health services we can refer to mental health services. Lastly, one of the things that we've done really intentionally is work closely, as Mr. Plasencia mentioned earlier, was with their department and really being able to push out workshops and information. One of the things that we're very happy to have is this parent-caregiver roadmap for social-emotional well-being and academic success. I know it's a mouthful, but it really is one of those things that it is a critical resource for families and caregivers, where we really talk about the importance post-pandemic, what are the challenges that our families and students are seeing, and it's really a way to build resilience at that family core. And we actually created a version that is similar to this, but for staff. So there's actually also a staff version, so that staff also have the necessary tools and resources to also carry these dialogues. So with that, that concludes our presentation. So I'm gonna invite my co-presenters to answer whatever questions you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Cisneros and Mr. Plasencia, Ms. Petrosian. We'll ask questions from around the panel, but I just have one burning question. What happens after 4:30 if you have a serious problem? Because I see those Saturdays and Sundays, and what should they do after 4:30?
Well, I think what 988 or 911. 911, obviously, we all know what that is. 988 is the emergency number for a mental health crisis.
Okay, good to
So
know.
if you're a family member that is experiencing any crisis, that is the number. You can also text that number.
Good,
And that
good
can
to
be the
know.
resource.
Good, thank you. That was just kind of making me nervous. What happens after 4:30? But you explained it very well. Okay, we have some questions. Sylvia, you're going to monitor the back so I can see. Questions, questions, questions. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. This was an amazing presentation, and I do have a few questions from each of the categories. And I definitely love the 988 number.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, if we didn't know about it, how do our parents know I mean, they know 911, but how do they know to call 988? So that wasn't one of my questions, but since it was asked, I'm curious, how is that rolled out to families?
Well, I think that's really good feedback. And so what we'll do is look at ensuring that whatever strategy is moving forward, we will employ those and work closely with Antonio's team and all school sites. We do have a Mental Health Awareness Month coming up in May, so we're going to make sure we incorporate a way to really message this, so to ensure that that's going out there.
Thank you. That really wasn't my question. Under welcoming environment, so I love that I've been involved with the family work centers, being on the campus, the community reps, and looking at the budget. Sometimes financially, they can only afford, the limited amount of money they can purchase, the community representatives. How will they go about purchasing like portable translators? I know a lot of times the campuses have your Spanish-speaking parents, your English-speaking parents, and there's always a little division. There can be division in the room because everyone can't necessarily understand. And if the school can't access Title I, where can they, and I know the district has the translation unit, but I've also know that it's impacted just by life. Just what are some funding that they can do to create portable translation units to make sure that those environments are, solid?
So I will commend our school board because our school sites received one-time family engagement allocations, which I would say they were the largest family engagement allocation in the history of many of our schools. Our school board set aside about $6.7 million in one-time funds solely for family engagement. And school sites are able to purchase equipment such as translation headsets, technology to upgrade parent and family centers, instructional materials. And then the board, again, when we received our federal ESSER III funds, these were one-time funds that were made available through the federal government. We again peeled out another significant allocation. The number escapes me right now. I believe it was like $6 million around there. And again, we redirected those dollars to school sites. There's a function in the school directory where if you type your school name, you move over to the budget segment of the document, you'll be able to see how many of those funds remain at your school. It's a real-time document that is available, but the board and the school district has invested in those one-time funds to help us rebuild family engagement post-pandemic. So those are some funding sources. And lastly, I will say our translation unit, they go above and beyond for us. So when they're not able to support a program, you're able to coordinate with them to contract services to your school site. So that's just giving them kudos that they're trying to cover us in all angles.
I love that. Real quick, on the nurses program, I know that the nurses at the schools, they're overwhelmed, and some schools do have one nurse. Some schools are able to budget more. Is anything being done through LAUSD to reach out to colleges as the students are in the nursing programs? Are we doing some outreach, some career planning, saying, hey, come over here, come work with us. We need to have you in the schools, because maybe they're tunnel vision, like, oh, I'm going to be a nurse and go to Kaiser, go to here. Maybe they don't know the opportunities that are available for them at LAUSD. How are we navigating that?
That's a great question. We absolutely do that. We do partner with our colleges and universities. In fact, we have students during their public health rotation come and shadow our nurses so that they can see what school nursing is all about. If that's an area that's of interest to them, then they can learn about it. And we also partner with our adult ed centers that offer LVN programs, and we recruit from those schools. And Mr. Schmolson asked earlier today about that, and we're hoping to expand those programs and make them available to our students. And lastly, we also work with our medical magnet students because it's a great way to get our students to become our own employees eventually.
Thank you for that.
Let me just mention, Antonio, that the translation unit is wonderful. There's just not enough of them. That's the problem. So at my school, I bought a whole set of the translation equipment, and you have to find someone who can translate. I mean, now I had the equipment, but it's not so easy to do simultaneous translation, but it certainly helped. They were always booked, right? Always busy, and so we just bought our own. Okay, thank you. Jenna, I know you had your hand up.
Hello, thank you. So I just want to quickly just jump back. Mr. Placencia, you were talking about a website that people can go to check budgets. Can you say what that is
Of
specifically?
course, we have schooldirectory.lausd.net. This is a site where you can search for just various information from your school site. It lets you know who your community school administrator is, their phone number, their website. And when, let's say you go to X Elementary School, you go to their page, and the bottom right-hand corner, there is school budget resources. And you drop down, and they give you a wonderful one-pager. Our budget office has organized a one-pager that shows your budget allocation. So you should be able to see the budget allocations for next year. In addition to that, there's a second link where you're able to see a site that shows you line by line each budget allocation, how much was initially provided to the school site, how much has been spent. So it's a wonderful tool for transparency, and it's a tool that we routinely message when it comes down to budget development for school communities.
I feel like one of the things I say every time we're here at these meetings is that the information that is available is talked about in these meetings and at board meetings and in all meetings as sort of a given, when the truth is most families don't know any of this, which brings me to the parent and community reps. I think a lot of what was discussed, again, coming from Beaudry, coming from the top, feels very fact-based, when the truth is parent and community reps often have to do administrative work for overworked schools. I was curious what kind of training they're given at the district level to do their job appropriately, like reaching out to families, engaging with families, what training is provided for them?
In one of the pictures, I was able to show with you the specific sort of skills of development that has been a focus for our regional family engagement teams. One area is that many of our community reps take tools, resources from the community, and in the example that you saw in the picture, they were going through a training on how to develop a workshop out of that. How do you develop dialogue and learning around what is presented? Every month, they are invited to regional professional development. And in that professional development, they're giving very some fact-based learning around just the resources available at Student Health and Human Services, what's available in the Division of Special Education, to our multilingual, multicultural education division. So they get informational content, but then they're also given training around school volunteer program, parent portal, establishing a welcoming and well-organized parent and family center. So there's looking at the specific job duties that are assigned to them, this is how they're offered that support. I also will say that oftentimes we think about family engagement and then link it to community reps. The literature of family engagement and what I presented today speaks to a team-based approach to family engagement. Family engagement is about the role of our office staff, our coordinators that support family engagement, as well as our parent and family center personnel, campus aides, all individuals that are integrated into the school in building a team-based approach. So where do we offer this additional learning so that it doesn't feel like, wow, where is this? We have embedded this learning into our Family Academy. We have an SSC and ELAC ambassadorship where we guide schools to learn on the budget process, the resources, and the tools. We also offer our school site council training where we make this available. And the last component is that we observe that principals, we want to make sure that the budget development process isn't transactional but transformative. So we've developed curated course modules for them that include these resources that they can adapt to include their school data. And so with our new professional development structure, this is the first year where we were able to offer this data training on how do you engage from a cycle of continuous improvement, which is how do we do better? How do we use data to become better? We were able to do that for the first time for all of our school sites because of the alignment of the strategic plan. So we're moving in the direction of defining what our school site leaders, community reps, and so on develop as mastery skills. And so the budget component, the how do you engage around that is one of the areas that we're working on, and we started to do that this year.
Excellent. And then you were talking about the one-time funds that everyone received. Was that given to every school, or was that given to only Title I schools?
It was given to all schools. We used our CENI formula. So if you, from the Valley to Pedro, Venice to East LA, all of our schools received an allocation because we understood that engagement, you might have lost Title I, or you may not have other streams like, or maybe your TSPL CFF funding from the state is not as large. So we offered 2 funding sources to supplement, and they were specifically for family engagement. And those funds do expire this year.
And then my last question, how does this work for schools that aren't Title I and don't have?
Our schools, all schools received our one-time family engagement funds. So we use CENI based on need.
Yes, but I'm saying separate from that, I don't know the exact number, but like 10% of schools are not Title I. Do they fund their own parent reps? And if they don't fund their own, like I know I was at a school that didn't have a parent rep. Who takes on this responsibility, because it's so important at a school that there isn't a parent rep?
Absolutely. So all of our school sites receive state-funded local control and accountability plan dollars, and that's included in your school site budget sheets. And goal 4 of the LCAP is family engagement. So what we oftentimes see non-Title I schools do is that they do generate funds that allow them to fund a community rep position, whether it be 2-3 hours. Some school sites will find ways to organize the responsibilities. For example, school volunteers might be processed through the office or through an administrator, right? The funds that they have available, they'll bring in parent workshops, or they'll contract with a vendor to offer and support family engagement activities. So really, there's no one size fits all. Every school does leverage supports, and I think we have to acknowledge the work of our parent organizations. We have many school sites where our parent organizations volunteer, organize, and serve to offer enrichment and engagement during and after school as well.
And we will have round 2, so don't worry. And I know you're next. I just want to say that in Jenna's case, yes, you can have a parent rep, but you have to have something else not be in order to have a parent rep. I mean, you have to decide. You don't get everything. You have to decide as a school group, what do you want to fund, and what do you have to give up to have that funding. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and congratulations on all the great work that you all are doing. I really appreciate the intentionality and alignment to the strategic plan. Looks like you're moving forward and making those connections. And I just recently joined the state SAR board, and so I really think that strong relationships on campuses are going to make a huge difference in improving attendance for our students. The metrics as well I was looking at, these are the set metrics, or are these still sort of evolving?
Those are the set measures of our strategic plan that we're following through 2026.
Okay. Some of them are like, you're going to meet 100%. That's really tough because that 100% is 100%. And others are, not as robust. So that'll be interesting to watch as you roll out. Pre-COVID, there was a big movement to fill a lot of vacancies with the school nurses. Is there still a high vacancy rate, or are you all still hiring? How is that going right now?
There currently is a vacancy rate. We have about 300 vacancies. We are trying to fill those school nursing positions, which are basically registered nurses with a credential.
Yeah.
And as a result of being unable to fill all of the positions, we've been bringing on those licensed vocational nurses who can't do everything a credentialed school nurse can do, but they can do a lot of the procedures and protocols to help support our neediest students.
Good to know, because I still work on some workforce policies, and yeah, I know that was a pipeline issue that we were dealing with pre-COVID, so 300 vacancies, wow, okay. Well, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank
Gosh.
you.
And Mr. Cisneros knows that we have a very strong interest in creating more access to mental health services. Ms. Lee, who also participates on the LA City Youth Council, just completed a 10-month citywide strategic planning process for our 26 departments that provide services to young people. And of the 6 priorities that came to the top, greater access to mental health services is one of those. So you and I talk all the time about this. I'm curious, when you call the hotline after 4:30, is there a recorded message that directs folks to 911 and 988?
There is.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. And and all the services you talked about, is this really K-12 focused, or does this also include the division of adult?
It's really just K-12.
Really just, so is there a separate approach or different sort of activities for your adult students, or?
Well, for our adult students, what we're doing a lot is we're not going to leave them out, but there aren't as many direct clinical services, so there are a lot of linkage to resources or linkage to partnerships. We might do a lot of presentations and workshops to, build capacities, but as far as direct clinical work, that's something that is not there.
You mentioned like 13,000 calls to the hotline. Is there sort of like disaggregated data about the types of calls that you're receiving, the types of services that are being requested?
Yeah, we do have that. I don't have that in front of me, but I know we do track it. I know historically it's always been mental health has been one of the biggest ones, and then also basic needs. So again, asking, and then we can dig in a little bit more if needed.
Be interesting to see like how those calls kind of spread out there.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned that you have now a child psychiatrist on board. Is that one, or is there a team, or?
So we actually have had that child psychiatrist on board. So yes, so it's one, and then we also have other contracts to partner with UCLA psychiatrist.
One. We need more.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Mr. Melvoin.
Thank you all. I'll be brief because I want to hear from my fellow committee members. But really, I think there are, I think sometimes when we're focusing on a lot of the programs, and you listed so many incredible ones, we often forget about just like the maybe common sense indicia of like welcoming environments. And I know, Mr. Schmelson and I and others are at schools every week. In some schools, like they have signs that I know maybe are compliance driven, but it's like, if you come here with your dog, like you'll get fined, or like you're in a school zone, like don't do anything fun. Like, and I'm being a little facetious, but I do think that there are little things like that. And there's also some well-intentioned ideas. Like I remember actually driving down Beverly to Beaudry a few months ago, and there was a school that had a banner that was like, go to our website to enroll, www.schoolloop.lusd.com/enrollment/ it's like, so I think that sometimes it could be helpful, and I know that there are schools that do it really well, to share best practices, not on like the, parent rep or nursing services, but just some of the little things like customer service best practices. And maybe that's something, Mr. Placencia, you're already doing in these summits, but the little things like where compliance signage should go. versus where maybe you're putting it, or what the front office should look. And because I think there are those little things, and you can tell right when you walk in, like, oh, they get it. Like, I feel really welcome. And it's not different than walking into a doctor's office or to the DMV. Like, we all can see right away, like, this person is happy to have me, this person's not. And I think some of that. So my suggestion would just be kind of maybe doing a scrub of some of those like best practices that are of less importance than some of the big programs, but actually make a real difference when it comes to like a parent or a community member feeling welcome at the school. So that's all I've got for right now.
Thank you. I have a few questions. Jenna, I was chuckling to myself about the budget at my previous school. I know that the parents decided that they didn't want any copy machines at the school. No copy machines. They were very expensive. So I said, well, how are we going to get the copies done? Well, they told me, you go to Kinko's. Me, you go to Kinko's every day, and you bring the copy order, then bring it back. I said, well, that's not real practical, because I'm supposed to be at the school supervising instruction and making sure everything's cool. But that was one of the suggestions, no more copy machines. Okay, Mr. Plasencia, for me at least, there's a confusion. Community rep, parent rep, family, wellness, navigator, are they all different things?
It's going to become a dissertation, but essentially, we have various classifications, and in a previous Family and Community Engagement Committee meeting, you may recall that Ms. Gould and her team from the Personnel Commission offered a presentation on those classifications. The community rep was the position that you see today in most of our schools. Those positions grew exponentially during the last recession in 2009-10 because school budgets were tight. So that community rep was established during the civil rights movement, and those positions started to create integration within communities after segregation ended, right? So that position has been historically connected to our Title I work and the civil rights movement, and that is sort of like your introductory position for family engagement on the classified side. The one that follows is a promotional step. It does require additional roles and responsibilities, and that is your parent resource liaison or parent resource assistant. And so those positions are either language specific, but they do require additional responsibility and assigned duties on the campus. And I will let my colleague, Mr. Cisneros, speak about the navigator. I can speak to it because they work so synchronously, but I'll let Mr. Cisneros speak to it.
Yeah, let's let him do it. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Cisneros.
So we have a student family resource navigator, and those are really, again, personnel commission driven, and those positions are really, the focus is really to do a lot of the coordination, and as we like to say in the mental health world or the student health and human services world, like the case management in particular around like social emotional needs. And so really, obviously, there's a component of engagement that's needed, but it's really, they follow more around like a specific need that has been identified with a family, in particular around social, emotional, or wellness needs.
So if a parent wanted to look at the website at LAUSD, would they be able to find these positions and explain what each one is in case they said, do I want to be a navigator or do I want to be a community rep? Or would they be able to see this on the webpage, do you think, or no? I know it's a complicated term.
The Personnel Commission, the Personnel Commission does list every single position.
Well, you would spend all day.
Exactly.
Right.
And it does list the job descriptions, et cetera, but that would be the place right now.
So, if you could, Mr. Cisneros and also Mr. Plasencia, if you could figure a way on the website just to simply explain to parents if they were interested in this position. I mean, we have everything. We have light bus drivers, heavy bus drivers, but these specific things for parents, would be nice if they could see.
We do have a budget a handbook, that including a Title I handbook as well, that includes a lot of these items, but we'll look into.
Thank you.
We've already created a simple sheet for budget. We'll talk a little bit about positions.
Thank you. Getting back to the school site, who's in charge of volunteer applications? Who is supposed to handle those volunteer applications?
The school volunteer program, the ultimate sign-off is the school administrator, because there's a safety component connected to that. We have a fairly streamlined process where we review for Megan's Law clearance, TB test clearance, our COVID-19 vaccination upload. And so that is all, the school site will, administrator will set a designee. In many instances, it might be an administrator or someone in the office, a community school coordinator, and essentially they gather the various pieces of information. It comes to the central office and the Office of Student, Family, and Community Engagement. We vet the process to make sure that to just clear also a second review for school safety, and then the volunteer is approved. But it is the school administrator who is responsible for approving and determining eligibility of someone being essentially in the right mindset to serve as a volunteer.
Is there a fee?
No fees. We provide for, we've created categories of volunteerism to ensure that our families that might be mixed status legally here in the nation, that they don't have to go through the worry of like fingerprinting and things of that nature. And their responsibilities are organized to area items where they're supervised by a certificated point of contact. Anyone that does require live scan fingerprinting for overnight trips, helping in the meal area, in the cafeteria, we, through our regional spaces, we provide free fingerprinting for our volunteers.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So go ahead.
You
I know you're going to say something.
You have to
Go
pay
ahead.
for a TB test.
So most of our families, in working with Student Health and Human Services, they can go to their Medi-Cal provider, their health provider to get a service, but the only item that they would have to pay is, and if you look at our Title I population, they're eligible for medical services. So there's an opportunity for them to get that TB test through a medical provider. What oftentimes happens is families will say, I don't want to use, we've had instances where families say, I don't want to use that side of my health record for that work. But there are clinics, we also work with some of our clinics through our wellness centers, I believe, to offer TB tests.
So that was actually what I was going to say. So for the wellness centers, is that something, because I know that is, I mean, I get asked that a lot, that you do have to pay for the TB test, and it can be $40. I mean, it's not cheap. So is that something that can be available for volunteers at the wellness centers?
I think, again, it's at some clinics, and then it would be mainly if that family has Medi-Cal, and then it can be part of their medical coverage in that regard.
Okay. it
So
is-
at a
it's
school, I
required.
would love to have a document that if someone says they want to volunteer, these are the steps you have to do, so you don't have to keep asking everybody, what are you supposed to do? There it is. There's what you're supposed to do. And each school should have, that would be ideal.
Yes, and I was at a parent center yesterday at Parmley Elementary, and they do have our 4-page volunteer guide. We've evolved a guide from the reference guide that we have with our bulletin, and there's a 4-pager that includes the steps and the process.
Excellent.
It has a table on what you need for each of the steps and who to contact as well.
Excellent. This one is for SOSI. So a parent says, my child has really special needs, and as you talked about, sometimes you need a protocol nurse for catheterization or whatever. So who should the parents speak to at the school if their child has special needs? If the nurse is not there that day, let's say, who would they speak to?
They should call their local district nursing office and speak to the nursing administrator, who is also a school nurse, and can help support. A lot of times we need protocol orders from the physician or the healthcare provider, and so that nursing administrator can help support, get that paperwork in place.
That's great. So again, my wish would be that if a parent came in and had this concern, that someone would have the phone number of the coordinating nurse to discuss this. So that would be great, so they don't have to start asking everybody and nobody knows, and then they're giving your business to everybody in the main office. You don't want to do that either.
Noted.
And the last one, mental health for big people, like teachers, like principals. Is there such a thing as mental health assistance for adults?
Well, we do have a partnership with the LA County Department, LACO, the LA County Department of Education, where all employees have access to the EASE program. It's called, and it skips me what the acronym stands for, but essentially it's an access for employees to call and receive mental health support if needed, in addition to other resources. So that's certainly something that all of our principals have been made available aware, and resources have gone out to school sites. And we use it, unfortunately, very often when we do go out on a crisis, and that's a handout that we constantly give out to our staff.
So another wish of mine, I'm full of wishes today, is to have on some bulletin board in the main office for adults, if you need assistance, mental health assistance,
Yeah.
this is the number you call.
Got it?
So you don't have to ask anybody. Go ahead, Jenna. And then it's round two for everybody else.
Is the, and she's not here, but at our, I think it was our last meeting, Ms. Escudero was talking, is this the roadmap she was talking about at the last meeting that was being developed? The parent caregiver roadmap for social emotional
It
well-being?
sounds like it is, so yes.
Is this something that's newly developed?
Yeah, it was developed just a couple months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where does one find this? How does one get access? I mean, I've never seen it before, and I'm in school a lot.
Yeah, so I am going to sound like Board Member Movo said, the ... So it's at shhs.lausd.net. So if we, and I know it does, that's where it lives right now, shhs.lausd.net. We could certainly, and then it's also resilient. Yeah.
Is that something that parent and community reps, now I'm petrified, I'm going to say the wrong name. We've gone through so many names. That the people at the schools that are in charge of this can send out, because this is something all families should have.
Yes, most definitely. And so I think we,
Get a lot of
again, we have shared it with school staff and school principals, and we have worked actually in partnership in the development of that with PCS and other divisions. So yeah, so all of those staff members should be aware.
That could also be a very cool thing for board members to send out in their newsletters.
Hint.
Hint. Another
hint,
wish,
hint.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is the reason we have this committee. I mean, is to find things out and let people know, and I appreciate that very much. I have a question from Ms. McCoy.
Yes, real quick. I'm, again, a fan of the nurses because we would not be able to continue through this whole COVID without you. I'm also concerned that our parents, I just want to make sure they understand and know that there's an asthma program. That, most of the things on the first page, as a former administrator, totally familiar with. Some of the things on the second page as far as the immunizations, I know. But I didn't know there was an asthma program for students. So if a child has asthma and the parent just sends, the inhaler, and there's no communication, how would they be involved in the program? And just piggybacking on what's been said, even if there's some flyers made, just a one-pager, post this in the nurse's office, post this in the Family Resource Center, post this in the main office. These are the things that the nurses department have to offer, get in touch. Because, we have children with asthma and parents are struggling. They don't know that you're there and there's a program, we can help you through this, and they may not know about some of these other programs that are phenomenal. So let's get the word out, and just a simple flyer. Let's get some of the things we've mentioned, create some flyers, send it to the school and say, principals, give this to your community rep, the family center. This needs to be posted in the main office, in the nurse's office. These things need to be posted. My other question was when I looked at, school mental health, and I was looking at the diagram about mental health clinics, wellness centers, school support, educational related crisis, BSAP. Are these things that are permanent? Like I'm looking at BSAP, and I know at one point it was like a 3-year funding. Are these things, crisis counseling, going to be part of the fabric of LAUSD, or are they one-time funding based on federal budget? Because I'd like to know that everything on this page concerning mental health will always be part of the fabric of LAUSD.
Really good question, and today is our budget day that our budget closed, so those programs for next year will be there. And it's hard for me to predict, down the road, but for now, for next year, those programs are intact.
Because they should be as basic as, we know teachers are going to be there. We know, that's a given. This should be a given, because if our children aren't healthy, then there's no sense in us continuing doing what we're doing. We have to make that a priority.
I am your biggest fan.
I know you agree, but I'm just saying, I'm going to keep putting it out there.
Thank you.
And one last question. COVID-19 protocols. I'm work with USC, so there's some changes that USC just made, and some things we don't have to do. What are the ongoing, like, we have a date, May 19th. What happens with LAUSD as we're moving on for the next school year with the COVID-19 protocols? Has anything changed, vaccinations and requirements and any of that?
There's been no changes in the vaccination requirements. The county just canceled their emergency order, if you know about that. So masking is still recommended indoors, and if somebody has been in contact with someone who has COVID, but we usually take our direction from the county, so whatever they prescribe is what we would do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Boro.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. I have less of a question and more of a suggestion after listening to my colleagues this evening. So one suggestion that I have, based on the amazing resources that we offer here, is that within that 10 months that we have the calls and the texts that we receive from our representatives, Mr. Placencia, we know that your voice is the one that we know from the phone, potentially breaking it up like our months. So for Asthma Awareness Month, texting out the information saying, did you know that the district has this? When we have Mental Health Awareness Month, maybe even once a month letting families know 988, right? Just making it a part of our community, a part of our system, so we're not bombarding them. I don't know, Jenna, because I know you're very close with schools, if these suggestions are ringing true with you based on what you do, but I think if monthly embedding what we offer in a natural way will allow families to share a lot easier. And then when we receive those text messages, we receive a link that we have to click to go and find out the information. But from the other text spams that I get that are a little bit more successful, may I suggest that instead you just put the picture, send us the flyer. And I know that there's the Android and iPhone communication, and that may not be a successful measure. I'll leave that to the techies. But my suggestion is whatever you can do to drop it in our lap, because that's literally what happens. And once it's in my lap, my time expands. I can look at it in 3 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon, at least I have it, right? I might miss your call, but I'm not going to miss that text. So those are my suggestions, in addition to potentially ticking them on our district page, and then that can trickle down to our sub-district pages. So when it's Asthma Awareness Month, it's becoming a full circle. It's on the district page. I may see it at my school. I'm getting a text message about it, but it's a family, right? Because when I tell my son something at home, my daughter hears it before I tell her. So some kind of way we have to make sure that we're connecting all of our pieces so the information is not landing in silos. Thank you.
Great idea.
Yeah, that is excellent. I want to add one more thing to that. I think schools who send home newsletters and things should remember the month of asthma awareness. Send it in the newsletter, too. You can never get too much information, really.
And that just makes it easier to figure out how do we disseminate the information. It's there, and everything is already in months. Like, as I'm looking at your list, almost everything on here has a month. So just embed it and then take the work off of yourself.
Well, that was really great. That was really, really great information. Thank you all so much. We appreciate your coming here and doing that for us and for the kids. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful. That's why I only have 2 agenda items at these meetings, because we can talk all night, because they're really meaty agenda items. Okay, now we're going to move on to number 2, and that is our strategic plan. It has 5 pillars. And as part of Pillar 2, joy and wellness, one of our priorities is to commit to creating environments where students feel safe, they feel welcomed, and they feel excited to learn. So not only does this pillar represent our commitment to serving the whole child, but also creating learning spaces where all of our students can thrive and reach their full potential. So when I visit my schools, I make sure that every school has what they need to ensure that students are safe on campus to the best of my ability. So for this presentation, I have the great privilege of introducing a great person, a good friend, and my former superintendent for Northeast, Mr. Andres Chait, and another good friend, Chief Zipperman. And you guys will get us started on the second presentation, so take it away, please.
All right, thank you, Scott, and thank you, committee, for the opportunity to present this afternoon, or this evening, rather. As Mr. Schmerlson mentioned, my name is Andres Chait. I am the Chief of School Operations for the Division of School Operations, appropriately enough. Prior to this, I was the Superintendent in Local District Northeast, supporting 122 schools in the Northeast San Fernando Valley, an area that I'm very proud to still call home. I'm joined this evening by my, I was going to say partner in crime, but that probably would not be appropriate. The Chief of School Police, Steve Zipperman. Good evening. All right, before we dive into the content, I want to kind of just walk us through the agenda. So again, obviously our focus tonight is a safe school environment, and that has a number of different facets. I'm presenting tonight not just in my professional role, but also as a district dad, as a husband to a district teacher. So every morning when I drop off my girls at school, I am entrusting the principal, I am entrusting the plant manager, I am entrusting the school staff that they will keep my girls safe from 7:30 till about 3:30 when they get picked up, and that is obviously a sacred responsibility. So we'll be looking at staff and student safety, some parts that may seem basic that our staff does on a daily basis, but that makes a key difference to maintaining a safe environment. We'll be looking at drills. All of us probably can think back to when we were students and can think of the drills that we used to do, whether it was duck, cover, and hold, any number of things. So we'll take a quick walk through that. I will be taking us through the revised integrated safe school plan. For those of us that have been school administrators, we may remember the ISSP, these giant binders that are supposed to be available at your front desk. I'll be showing you some revisions that we're making for next year. Of course, we're going to key in on communication. Communication is key. It kind of piggybacks on what our prior presenters were talking about. We can have amazing resources at our campuses, but if no one knows about them, then they're really of no value. Along those same lines, I'll be doing a quick dive into two applications that we launched about a month and a half ago, LASAR and the Emergency Alert apps. I'll do a quick cover on those. We'll be talking about homeless encampments. We know that homeless encampments present a challenge, sometimes in terms of ingress and egress for our families and for our kiddos as they make their way to and from school. Where I'll finish will be with the discipline foundation policy, and that really is a piece that, for the most part, resides with our students and with our school staff, but I'll provide a little bit more detail. And then I will hand off to Chief to talk about jurisdictional issues when it comes to school police and LAPD and our active shooter trainings that we carry on. So again, the next couple of slides are things that maybe we, for lack of a better term, sometimes take for granted as givens, things that are done on our campuses, but they are critical to maintaining a safe and secure campus. So really, the majority of this responsibility lies with our custodial and our administrative staff at our school. Our custodial staff, as probably most of us know, are usually the first folks on campus and the last folks on campus. They're getting there at 5:30 in the morning, maybe earlier, maybe a little bit later, and they're usually leaving 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. So it stands to reason that they're the ones that are going to do that first check as they come onto campus in the morning and as they leave for the evening, and they'll of course loop in school police or any other relevant staff as needed. They're going to ensure that all of our building doors and gates are locked every night, of course, and any intrusion alarms that we may have are armed and disarmed as appropriate. And importantly, during school hours, they are the folks that ensure that all of our gates and exterior doors are locked other than the main office, right? We want from 8 to 3:30, or depending on the hours at the school, we want one point of ingress and egress for everyone who needs to have business on our campus. Some additional pieces that are in place at our campuses, contingency plans for how we communicate depending on the emergency. I'll give you a real life example. A couple of months ago, we had a situation where school police was on a campus looking for basically a trespasser. And it was not a situation where it was recommended for the administrator to get on the public address system and say, hey, everyone, we're looking for someone on our campus who means us harm. So that wouldn't be appropriate. So at that school, the system that they had is the principal had a text chain with all the teachers. And the principal on the text chain said, go on Schoology right now. Schoology is our learning management system that we can also use for messages. When teachers would log on to Schoology, it would say, remain in your classroom, close your door, please wait for a further alert. So each campus, depending on, each campus has its own nuances. It's a backup system in terms of communication. Safe passages, that's more around the perimeter of our campus. It's not necessarily on the campus, but again, looking at the existing realities of each campus, what are the challenges, right? Sometimes it may be encampments, like I referenced earlier. Other times it may be we have campuses that lack a sidewalk in front of the campus, right? So how do we get students to and from campus in a safe fashion? As needed, conducting threat assessments and safety plans. Those can be for students, those can be for staff. They're situational, so they're going to be unique based on the challenge. You may have, again, just to give a couple of examples, you may have an employee who is having a spousal issue. So you have an ex-husband or ex-wife who is presenting as a potential threat to that person and by extension to the campus. So you have to look at conducting a threat assessment. What's the safety plan? Maybe there's an individual that walks that employee to their car at the end of the day every day, right? In other cases, it of course may be about students. And of course, for critical emergencies, we're going to loop in our partners in school police, trespassing, loitering, of course, our school threats. And I say this carefully, we're blessed in the sense that the overwhelming majority of the threats that we receive to our campuses turn out to be unfounded, but we take each and every threat seriously. Even if we know, this is probably someone in Ohio who is calling because they have nefarious intent, but they're not going to do harm. It doesn't matter. We take it seriously each and every time. Segueing to our drills, so again, just kind of walking us through some numbers so that you know the expectations. For our early education centers, our elementary schools, and our middle schools, the baseline expectation is that through the course of the year, August to June, schools are conducting 13 drills, right? So it's obviously a little bit more than one a month, and you can see the different categories of drill. Fire, earthquake are pretty self-explanatory. For lockdown, shelter in place, and take cover, just to kind of give you the nuances of each one. A lockdown is you actually believe that there is a threat on your campus, like a trespasser, and so everyone goes into their classrooms, closes the doors, remains in place, stays away from windows, so on and so forth. Shelter in place is similar, but has to do with like an environmental threat, like there's a hazardous chemical in the air. So you're going to have everyone inside, you're going to have the doors closed and the windows closed, but kids can go about their business, they can, instruction can continue as long as folks are indoors. And take cover is ultimately, if God forbid there is some kind of a threat and maybe some of our students are out at nutrition, recess, lunch, what have you, training our students to know, okay, if I'm outside, I'm going to go under the lunch tables for shelter, whatever it may be. And for our secondary students and also for our adult learners, we conduct 9 drills per year. Okay. Now, this is one of the significant revisions that we're making to the ISSP, the Integrated Safe School Plan. Every time I use an acronym, I look at Scott, and I can hear him like Yoda telling me, spell out the acronym, Andres. All right. So the ISSP, again, is sort of our Bible, if you will, as principles for all of our procedures related to safety. At the beginning of the year, it ties in with what we call an administrative certification, where we review a number of different bulletins and policies with our employees. Those are done with varying levels of fidelity. So as I came into this role, one of the things that I really wanted us to dig into is the ISSP and put out some specific training modules that for the most part will be done on a triple track, and I'll explain what I mean in a second, around some key topics, some key safety concerns on our campuses. As you'll see, there's basically a calendar for the entire year, and I'll walk us through each topic. When I say triple track, what I mean is that for most of these topics, with the one key exception, the expectation is that the school leader, usually the principal, maybe an AP, is going to deliver a version of this content for staff, for students, and for parents. Right? Because one of the other things that we heard a lot of times is teachers are getting wonderful information. In some cases, maybe the students are getting wonderful information. Maybe the parents are, but there isn't coherence where everyone is hearing roughly the same message. So just to kind of walk us through some of the topics, and again, these are really awful topics, but they're things that we have to be aware and cognizant of. First and foremost, starting in August, we're looking at grooming awareness. What is appropriate adult, what does an appropriate adult to child relationship look like, right? We talk about mentoring. There's a place for mentoring in our system. But where and how does that cross the line into something that's potentially inappropriate? So that's obviously something we want to cover. Suicide awareness and prevention, I don't think I need to necessarily explain the importance of that one. Substance use awareness, we know that that is a key topic. We've evolved maybe from the days of, now it's different substances. We know fentanyl is front of mind, so having that awareness for our communities. School violence prevention. In January, we pivot to cybersecurity. We know that a few months ago, the district was victim of a large cyber attack that basically kind of crippled our resources for a number of days. So something we need to be aware of. In February, this is really the only topic that would only be for administrative staff, and that's on the rare occasion that an administrator has to do an investigation around employee misconduct, having that training once a year. And then the last couple of topics for the year, grooming awareness, but from a digital perspective, from an online perspective, we know a lot of that happens now on whether it's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever the app du jour may be, it happens in that space. And then lastly, breaking the silence, child abuse awareness, making our staff aware of, again, what are some of the indicators that there may be child abuse going on. So again, we, and by we I mean the Division of School Operations, will provide our school leaders with, as one of my colleagues likes to say, on a silver platter, PowerPoints, modules, facilitators, guides, everything they'll need to be able to do this content for staff, for parents, for example, like at a coffee with the principal. This is exactly the kind of topic that you would cover. And then, of course, on a student level as well. Maybe it's something that's covered during advisory periods for secondary. Maybe it's something that's done as an assembly. But again, always age appropriate, age specific. Pivoting to communication. Again, communication is key. If you can have all the safety measures you want, but if nobody knows what your protocols are, then they're of little to no value. So again, looking at this from a parent or community perspective, if you want to or need to report an incident, something that's happening on your campus, and I say this with some bias because I am a former principal, go to your school principal first. That person, it may not be in the job description, but principals are by nature problem solvers. So if you come to them, 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty confident they'll be able to route you in the right direction, get you the right information. So if you have a concern, please start with them. Okay, it's not called out here, but if for whatever reason maybe you've already tried that and you don't feel like it's being addressed, that's why we have the regional offices, right? That's when you can come to your regional soup, your COSAs, your other staff. A couple of other resources here, which I'll cover in a sec. LASAR, which again I'll cover on the subsequent slide. And for our staff, we have the Emergency Alert app. We also do have, of course, our School Police Watch Commander. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 213-625-6631. You can call those folks any time of day or night. I know that, sometimes I've driven by my kiddo's school, at 10 at night on a Saturday, and I see some lights that are still on. I might give them a call just to say, hey, listen, it's probably nothing to worry about, but there's a couple of lights still on at the school. All right, LASAR, and in a sec, I'm going to hand off to Chief to give us some more data on this because we have some key examples of how it's already in place. This is something that Superintendent launched, I'm going to say about 2 months ago, and it is an application. It's available on, iOS and Android, all of the app stores for downloading, and this is designed to be really for anyone. So it can be a community member, it could be a student, it could be a parent, anyone who wants to have the ability to anonymously report non-emergency issues to the school. And it's monitored 24/7, again, by school police, by the watch commander, and they basically triage reports as they come in and route them appropriately, right? If it's something that is best handled by a school administrator, most likely they're going to go to the principal. If it's something that requires an additional response, maybe from Student Health and Human Services, they might loop them in. Chief, let me invite you up here to give us some more detail on this one.
Thank you. Good evening, committee chair, committee members. As Mr. Chait was saying regarding LASAR, in the first month that LASAR was actually activated, I'm not sure if Andres mentioned it, we've already had over 3,000 downloads for that. And within that first month, we actually had thus far 103 LASAR notifications to the Watch Commander's office. And as as some of you, I don't know if you've downloaded the LASAR, you're aware of it. It has basically 6 type of categories. Basically, it could be a school threat or safety threat, which could also be a situation involving a possible person with a gun or an active shooter, vandalism, property, drugs or narcotics, mental health issues, and other type weapons. And then within those categories, this far, since it's been activated, about 43% of the 103 calls have been actual safety type threats that have come in anonymously. And then the second highest is about 22% with drugs and narcotics. And what we've tracked so far is only 8% of those total calls for LASAR actually resulted in a call for service, where school police actually had to respond to an incident. As opposed to us, the watch commander would triage the type of call that came in or the type of anonymous report that came in. And if it was something that was facilities related, they would forward that to the proper facilities region. If it was something that was more school related, they would forward that to the school administration. And those get triaged and they get sorted out, and only, again, only about 8 of those were actually calls for service. But I think what's important to understand is, just to show you some of the success of this application, even over the last 2 weeks, one instance that happened actually yesterday in our North region. This was at a middle school, and the application of the user that called in sent information about a possible student with a knife, and we had a second LASAR anonymous report about somebody who responded about that as well. School police did respond to the campus. A investigation was conducted along with school administration. There was a person located, and after an investigation with that, there actually was, the knife was located in a restroom. So that's one example of how this anonymous reporting app can work and prevent, a possible critical safety issue. Another one that was sort of successful is about a week prior, we had a LASAR anonymous reporting of a possible victim of a sextortion, a student. And we followed up on that, and we're happy to say that it was not a sextortion type crime. However, it was an issue that was related to some type of possible issue with a relationship that was handled by school administration. So, but again, this app is fairly new, and we continue to monitor it and continue to take a look at how we can refine it. And I believe we even have these are an example of a posters that we're putting out to the schools. And when we go to any type of public events or that we speak at, we actually have one that's fairly large. It's an actual on a stand. So we feel very confident that this LASAR is another way to allow anybody in the school community, students, staff, parents, anybody, to report anything. As Mr. Chait indicated, it may be, whether it's him driving by on a Saturday night and seeing something suspicious out of school and calling the school police watch commander, which that direct line you can do. This also allows us 24/7 to respond to something that could be something that's critical. That's basically a background of LASAR. I do want to say that although LASAR is there for the anonymous reporting with those 6 areas, if somebody does call and they really can't figure out what it is, it doesn't matter which one of those tiles they're going to push. The watch commander will still get the information, and they will be able to triage that. And again, we also have, other than LASAR, the typical anonymous reporting systems available, like Crime Stoppers LA, are also available. So that's just one avenue that is an addition to other avenues that have already been in place. Thank you.
Another application that we recently rolled out, and this is specifically for employees only, is the emergency alert application. It's also available for download already on the Apple Store and the iOS, or the iOS and the Android store. And what this is intended to be is if, again, God forbid, an employee finds themselves in an active assailant situation, they can, with the push of one button, get an alert out to the watch commander and to the school administrator. So let me kind of walk us through how that works. So the employee would download the application, whenever they do that. There is a requirement that the employee take a training on MyPLN, so that's an online training. Once they take that training, they're able to log into the application with their single sign-on, their employee number. They only have to do that once. Right, so they're not doing that during the emergency, they're doing that when they first set up the app, so it's already set up. Because the whole premise of this is that, again, if God forbid you're in that situation, and there's been a lot of anecdotal information about how in active shooter situations, people have thought that they're calling 911, but because they're so obviously harried and upset, they're actually dialing like 933 or what have you, because they just can't manage that digital response. So in this, they basically open the app. It's literally a red alert, as you can see there, and all they have to do is hold it down for 3 seconds. That's it, 1, 2, 3. And that immediately triggers a call to the watch commander and an alert to the administrator at the school. There's no other action required. They don't have to type anything in. They don't have to do anything else. Because the whole point is you're in this situation, God forbid, you're probably, if you're a teacher, you're supervising students, obviously, right? So it's supposed to be as easy as possible for an employee to manage. Okay, moving on to homeless encampments. Again, I know this is a very sensitive topic and folks have a lot of different feelings about our unhoused folks, but it presents a challenge for our families as they make their way to campus. So more than likely, everybody here knows that the LA Municipal Code 41.18 passed back in September, and effectively what it said is that you can't have a homeless encampment within 500 feet of a school or a daycare. So within our district, and these are the numbers of homeless encampments that we have measured within our district, you'll see for the most part, with some exceptions, a steady decline from September when the municipal code went into effect into last month. You'll see that we went from 126 total encampments to now we're sitting at about 86. Even though we have pivoted to regions, the data that's available to us is still available by local district, and so that's why you'll see the 6 categories versus the 4. Now, how do we get this data? It's basically the regional operations teams. Our operations coordinators work with principals. They will actually go out to schools on a regular basis and actually track the homeless encampments. They will then give that data to us here centrally at Division of School Operations. We compile a spreadsheet, give it to our Office of Government Relations. They are in constant dialogue with city council members, with city agencies that are relevant to this work. And the city has actually come to rely upon the data set that we provide, right? They're not looking at a different data set. This is what they're looking for when they look at the encampments that are near schools. And depending on the situation, of course, we work with our city partners to see what resources we can provide. Again, schools, of course, can still call 311 for service. That's certainly still an option for them. And recently, we've been launching the signage that you see there that's supposed to be up on our campuses to give folks fair notice of the municipal code if for whatever reason they're not aware. So for my last couple of slides, I'm going to talk about the Discipline Foundation policy. And this is very different than everything I've already covered. Most of what I've covered up until this point is really about external factors, external threats, if you will, to our campuses, to our students, to our staff. The Discipline Foundation policy is actually a positive piece. It's a proactive piece, and it has to do with how we as school leaders, teachers, school staff, build expectations for our students around behavior. And what are the consequences for behavior? For the most part, you want consequences to lean into the positive, right? I think we've made as a district great strides in moving away from punitive measures, going directly to a punishment. You're going to go to the timeout room or those kinds of things. Most of those things, for the most part, are part of our past, not part of our present. And the Discipline Foundation policy presents a multi-tiered approach to doing that. So what does that look like? It's obviously Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 is about the supports and the expectations that we share with all of our students. So I was an elementary principal. We would review the expectations for the playground at the beginning of each semester, every couple of weeks, right before recess as needed, because you can't ask a kiddo to follow the rules if they don't know the rules, right? So we would cover those pieces on an ongoing basis, right? Tier 2 is when you get into the students that maybe do need a little bit more targeted support, right? For whatever reason, attending those assemblies, getting those presentations just isn't doing it for them, right? And then ultimately at the top of the pyramid, you have Tier 3, where students, again, despite Herculean efforts by the school and school staff, students are still having issues abiding with our expectations. Again, I want to emphasize really and truly, this is about positive behavior intervention support, PBIS. It's all about positive. And it's very small things, and it's also about knowing your audience. I'll bore you with one last story of when I was an elementary principal. So kids, as they would want to run on the blacktop. I'm sure that comes as a surprise to everybody. But I made a point that I did not like to tell kids, don't run. So when a student would run by, I would say, hey, mijo, thank you for walking. And they would look at me, and it was like a little cue, and they would get it, and they would walk. Years later, I was in a different job, and I visited a middle school, Mr. Schmerlson's old stomping grounds. And I saw a couple of middle schoolers running, and I said, thank you for walking. And they don't even break stride. They keep running. One of them just turns around, looks at me, and goes, ha, and just keeps running. So you have to know your audience, right? That's my point. But you have to do it in a positive way, right? That's the even more important point. How do we connect with kids in a way that makes them understand that we want to create the best possible environment for them to learn, right? When we talk about a welcoming environment, it absolutely should be welcoming for the adults, but it should be most welcoming for the students. So I'll kind of wrap with this. Again, as far as the discipline foundation policy, what are the elements that we emphasize? Again, predictability, common language, right? That our students know, all of us as teachers, as administrators, we use the same terminology, we use the same jargon. The 3 Bs, be safe, be respectful, be responsible. The kids, they hear it so often that it becomes like a mantra, right? Talking about creating a safe environment. And again, when I say safe here, I don't necessarily mean safety like in the prior slides. It's about creating those authentic relationships. Kids feel safe with you. They know they can come to you, right? And have a conversation with you about an issue that they may be having. And having plans in place to address behavior. You shouldn't be doing things on an ad hoc basis, right? It shouldn't be like, oh, this thing happened, let's figure out. No, it's the proverbial playbook and knowing what to do. Always, always, always being positive, right? There's the old line about, 3 positive affirmations for 1 maybe not so positive, right? Having that ratio, always leaning into that. And ultimately, the consistency, that they know whether they're in Mr. Melvoin's classroom, Mr. Chait's classroom, it's roughly the same expectations, the same things that we do as a school community, okay? And again, I think you build from there. If you have a good system of positive behavior in place, then you have more time as a school team to deal with some of possibly the external factors that you have to take into account. When you're running around as an administrator and you're kind of putting out fires all the time, that's when unfortunately things can maybe not go in the best direction. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief to walk us through the last couple of slides.
Thank you, Andres. So my part of the presentation is going to deal with a couple things. The first one is actual jurisdiction of LA School Police. So, what does that mean? And we exist within the confines of, and under the auspices of LA Unified, but 38,000 of the Ed Code actually allows a school district to establish either a security department with a head of a security or a school police department with a head of a police chief. So obviously, LA Unified has established their own police department. And I'd just like to mention before I go into the actual presentation, as this year, we are celebrating our 75th year as a school police department here at LAUSD. A long evolution, from a night watchman type of a concept to the way we are now. And I also want to mention, I think this is equally important, this week, we are celebrating National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. So our beloved dispatchers, the ones who answer the phones and take those emergency calls for service and dispatch those calls for service and keep an eye on all the units that are out in the field and communicate back and forth. They're the lifeline of the police services for this district. So I just want to do a shout out for them on their recognition week for that. So with the jurisdictional components, obviously LA Unified, which is 710 square miles, we encompass a lot of different municipalities and agencies. We have LA County Sheriffs, we have LAPD, and of the 710 square miles, 410 square miles is the city of Los Angeles. So a large portion of our services are provided within the city, but we also have, as I indicated, the county. We have our southeast cities with Bell and Vernon and Southgate and Huntington Park. And we also have in the San Fernando Valley, we've got the city of San Fernando. And then we even have a school that is in Topanga Canyon, which is serviced by a Lost Hills Sheriff. So we are all over. And when you look at about 13 municipalities that are within LAUSD, you can imagine what that miscommunication could look like when you've got 13 different agencies that are trying to communicate with law enforcement resources, communication, getting messages out, and being able to collaborate and really have a cohesive type of an operation. So LA School Police, 24/7 communication center that was already discussed. So we do provide most of the policing type services within all of our, within the entire district, and handle most of the crimes that could be a crime against a person, whether it's along our safe passages, whether it's a school that now calls us in the event of a crime in progress. I'll get a little bit further into some of those type situations, or protecting our facilities and all the assets district-wide with our property crimes. And so, for the most part, school police does respond to and handle the follow-ups with our detectives as it pertains to crimes against person. That could be an assault with a deadly weapon. It could be a battery. It could be a hate crime type incident. It could be any type of a threat that may occur, and it could be a robbery. And we handle those. We respond to those, and we have detectives that will do follow-ups if needed. And we, in most cases, we respond to these crimes if we have a suspect that is a student. We have a very robust diversion program where almost every type of crime, absent a few felony crimes that are mandated to make an arrest, almost all of the type of crimes that involve a student will be handled through a diversion process. And LAUSD, LA School Police, in teamwork with Student Health and Human Services and the PSA counselors, have a very, very robust diversion program. And we average, about, over 400 diversions a year. These are students and young people that, aren't getting citations, aren't getting put under arrest, aren't being booked and put in the criminal justice system at all. We are just the mechanism by which we respond to the school, and we ensure that it's not a type of crime that may have to be a mandated type of a custody. And when it's not, we just fill out a form and they report to the follow-up would be with the pupil service and attendance aspect of that equation. And so that's how we deal with that. On the crimes against persons, the ones we don't handle, are, of course, going to be your major crimes where we do not have the resources. And that would be incidents such as a homicide, and by law, the law enforcement agencies would handle any type of a child abuse investigation, any complex sexual type crimes where certainly either forensics or other types of follow-ups would be needed, and serial type crimes, and any type of selected major crimes where there may be more than one entity involved. But every agency that's out there, whether it's sheriffs or LAPD or the other agencies that I mentioned, they do have the overall authority to take over any type of crime if they believe it's something they need to handle. But in all cases, when that does happen, we remain connected to them and assist them in solving those crimes. So we do work hand in hand. One of our major programs that we have, besides the diversion program that I talked about, is about 2018. We began a pilot program with the Student Health and Human Services, Crisis Counseling and Intervention Services, and that's called the MET unit, Mental Health Evaluation Team. And I'm sure you've heard over the last couple of years of many municipalities and agencies that are trying to even switch over to a civilian type of response to these mental health calls. We started this in 2018, teaming up a school police officer that would be dressed in a softer type of a uniform, non-type uniform, soft clothes, along with a psychiatric social worker, a PSW clinician, and they worked as a partner every day. And we have 6 units a day that are out there responding to these calls. And really, it's really about providing that compassionate field intervention and be able to triage and provide linkages for immediate mental health crises. And although it is geared towards students, I know that committee chair and board member Smirlson, you did mention about sometimes we have adults that need that help. We don't limit ourselves to students if an adult is in need. And so we are part of that equation as well. That program, again, very robust, very successful. Just to take some note here, 21-22, we actually, the MET unit actually handled 560 calls for service out of the 860 total that were received. So they handle about almost 65% of those types of calls during the day. And what it does is, number one, it frees up a lot of the other clinicians, and number two, it allows us to have that intervention, and if there's a 55-85 transport where a student or an adult would have to be transported, because the police officer is part of this team, it's an immediate type transport, and they're not waiting for 2 or 3 hours for a mental health from the county to try to assist in finding a location. So it allows our civilian side, the PSW counselors. The other side of this is having a team that actually does case management follow-ups. So also, obviously, we have our parking enforcement side of the equation. We have calls for service when it comes to issues involving alarms at our schools on off hours. And when school police cannot respond to that, as we already indicated, our watch commander is 24/7. And we will call the police agency in which this alarm may be being activated, and a law enforcement agency from that area, one of the units from that area, will respond for us and provide us with the information, and any follow-ups that we need to do, we will follow up on that. Also, I want to mention, which is really important, we don't do this work on our own. We don't work in a vacuum. We are attached to the hip with the Division of School Operations, our regions, and other entities. That includes other, maybe federal, state agencies when we have, for instance, social media threats that may come out in the middle of the night. And we have a team 24/7 that is on call. So social media post comes out at, 12 midnight, and a parent is notified, student sees it, hey, Mom, look, I just found on the website, we're not supposed to go to school tomorrow because this says they're going to shoot the school up tomorrow. We actually have units to respond to that 24/7. We have the ability to follow up on, with resources about IP addresses, following up the addresses. If we have to door knock, 1 or 2 in the morning, we have units with the detectives that will do that. We want to make sure that, if we find the location where this threat may have originated, we follow up and we find out that in most cases, almost all cases, it's, hey, I was just kidding, I was just joking around, and the majority are students. So they are many times, given a diversion type of thing rather than an arrest. But oftentimes, the other part of the equation is we will ask, and we will, for consent search, do you own any weapons? There's been times when we have found weapons that have been available for a child to have access to because it wasn't locked up. And we've confiscated those weapons, and then in those circumstances, a parent will actually, receive a citation for that and have to respond on the criminal charges on that. But we have the FBI, we've got other agencies, the Joint Regional Intelligence Center, that can assist us in following up on these type of threats. And we also communicate with our LAPD partners, our sheriffs, or other agencies in which the school may reside. And so messages get out quickly to the parents that, there's no threat, it's deemed non-credible, and they feel a lot more comfortable sending their kids to school the next day. I do want to talk a little bit about some other signature programs that we're very proud of. We are involved in 9 of our schools right now with the Police Academy Magnet programs, in which we have an officer along with an LAPD officer that is part of the Magnet program when it comes to the preparation and understanding public service. And within that program, besides the course subjects that they do take, they have classes on leadership and civic engagement. They go through courses, allow them to conduct forensic type investigations and mock investigations and those types of situations. And I'm proud to say, along with the student integration services, where probably 99% of all PAM's children in that program, 99% graduation rate. And in most cases, a 98% rate of kids either going to college or a military type service, in any one of the armed forces, or moving on to any type of public service. So that's what that type of a program instills, and we're very proud of that. We have an AMPS program. It's called Anger Management Program for students. Our officers volunteer on their time off to assist with the AMPS coordinator, a retired sergeant from school police. This program, it has a motorized police car that actually talks to the kids. It's actually an officer behind the scenes that's doing it on the remote control, but this is for 3rd and 4th graders. And it's designed to teach them, kids, about anger management and bullying and stuff like that. And it's a program that is getting overwhelming success and overwhelming requests for continued presence at many schools. So we're very proud of that as well. And then I do want to also mention that as we talked about safety and what we do to prepare not only our administrators, our school sites, but our officers in the active shooter response. God forbid we have a situation at any of our schools where an armed person arrives at a school or threatened somebody in an active shooter type situation. And we talked earlier about, and Andres talked about the lockdowns. But go to the next slide, we can talk about the active shooter training and some of the preparedness. So for school police, during the summer, last summer before the 22-23 school year started, We have over 100 officers that participated in active shooter training prior to the semester starting. We have an active shooter training program for administrators that we do presentations during staff meetings, and that is ongoing all year round. Year to date, since July of this year, we've hosted over 215 active shooter presentations, which encompassing about over 6,000 staff members total. And we still have approximately 26 to 30 presentations that are currently counted through the rest of the year. And also to update our continued refresher courses for the school police. Just last weekend during spring break, we also had our active shooter training, and we had another 65 officers go through refresher course on that as well. Along with our officers that attend this training, we also attend training with other agencies and plan training with other agencies. So in the event we have interagency response in this LA area, it's almost a given. If a situation comes out of an active shooter type situation, numerous agencies will be responding because there's so many of them during the day that are out there that have their radio communications, and we hear they hear their frequencies just like we hear theirs. They respond as well. So it is a very quick response, and we certainly want to train together so that in the event when the first couple units are there could be one officer from school police, another officer from LAP or the sheriffs. We're all on the same page when it comes to how we respond and react to those. So that gives a little about our active shooter training and how we keep our schools safe and how we keep our staff and administrators safe with the training that we provide them, and a little overview of school police and what we do jurisdictionally. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. With that, thank you, everyone, for your careful attention. And if you have any questions we can be helpful with, we're happy to do our best.
Thank you. Let me start with the back. Questions on the front row? Go ahead, Jenna.
Hi. My question actually is for you, Mr. Chait. I'm looking at the Discipline Foundation policy, which is gorgeous. And my concern is that it's not effectively implemented in schools. And we're in this weird limbo in schools right now where restorative justice is supposed to be used, right? Positive discipline, all of that. That's the goal. That's the intention. But I think many people aren't receiving the training that they need to implement it. But we've taken away the former discipline measures, right, for good reason. But now schools are in this weird limbo where it feels like that's what we're hearing a lot from parents, that there is no discipline at school. So that's...
So I think I'm going to ever so gently push back on that. There's a couple of things. As far as the Discipline Foundation policy, again, DFP is not new. DFP has been around since I was a principal when dinosaurs walked the earth. It has been revised recently. The latest version of the policy was published in November. In looking at that policy, it's like a 44-page document. There are a number of resources embedded into it that speak to exactly what you're talking about. And this is recent to me because I had a meeting. I have a principal advisory group that I meet with on a regular basis. And some of them said kind of the same things. I don't know what to do with students. I used to have a timeout room. I used to have them sit at recess or lunch, which, by the way, folks, is never a good idea. Like, if a kid is already having a hard time staying still in class, making them sit still for 20 minutes at recess is a recipe for more of the same when they come back. Within that document, there are clear, consistent, and coherent consequences, for lack of a better term, that we can use with students to support that. Now, part of this also is, I think, attributable to, the impact that COVID had on all of our campuses in terms of our campuses not even being open for a large amount of time. So as we roll out the policy, or the refreshed version of the policy, one of the things that we're doing is we're bringing back the accountability piece. prior to this, we had what was called the rubric of implementation, the ROI. And schools used to have to complete a ROI. I see another former principal nodding her head, right? Used to have to complete the ROI to basically, kind of affirm that they had certain practices in place and that they covered rules and they had expectations and so on. We're shifting away from that, but we're using actually a nationally recognized tool. It's not something that LAUSD invented. It's called the Tiered Fidelity Inventory. It's similar to the ROI, but again, it's a national tool. It's something that's been developed by content experts, but it's much the same, right? Making sure that schools have in place all of these mechanisms, including, and I understand my answer kind of is a bit long-winded, but including your point about what are the tools in our arsenal as administrators, right? If we've done all the tier 1 pieces, we've done all the tier 2, what's still available to us? And the truth is there are some still pretty robust pieces. You just have to access them.
I do want to know what restorative justice training is. I guess for me, I look at this and I'm like, okay, you come up and you're responsible for external safety, and then this is also under your purview as a foundation of safety, but the truth is this is really more of a mental health situation. Like, who is leading this? Is it only under operations?
No, so
who's leading restorative justice? That's really what I want to know.
Student Health and Human Services falls under Division of School Operations, and thus why I am presenting on it. But they are the ones that are the content creators. My job is to, obviously provide leadership, but also ensure that the resources are being pushed out to schools and actually used. One last thing I'll say about restorative justice. There's this sort of, I don't want to call it a misunderstanding. That's a overgeneralization. But there is this almost like either or, like either we have punitive measures or we have restorative justice, and that's all that we have. Restorative justice, again, is one tool in our arsenal for how we address student behavior, creating a positive environment, and as needed, addressing harm that one student does to another. But again, yes, the work lives primarily under SHHS, but by extension through school operations.
I have a question or two. Are you finished? I'm sorry. Am I next or?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Just a few questions. So when you mentioned the triple training modules for staff, students, and parents, are these trainings available through Schoology or through the parent portal? And how are they rolled out for people to start accessing the trainings? And where does that lead, like community reps and people who are non-parents or, whatever?
No, these are trainings designed to be done in person by the school administrator. These are not like MyPLN. These are not modules that live online. These are trainings that I, as a principal, when I would have my monthly coffees with the principal, would embed it into that, right? When I'm having my student assemblies, again, leaning into my elementary experience, when I'm having my student assemblies with different grade levels, I would do it there, right? When I'm having faculty meetings with my staff, I would do it there. So it's very intentionally designed to be done in person with folks there versus something that is accessible online. We have a lot of, MyPLN, My Professional Learning Network. We have a number of online resources. This does not happen to be one of them, and again, that's by design.
Oh, that's good. Second question, with school police, I know that at one point there were school police, they were assigned to campuses, and that seems to have, it's been a lot with the police, with defunding and that piece. I've talked to different principals at different times, and they've had some crises. They've called, LAPD and their LA school police, and they're just not available. They, I don't know what the funding for LA school police have been cut, and that has impacted the school. If there's something happened and they do make a phone call, do they have to measure it? What determines whether they'll get a school police to come to school?
Well, thank you for that question. I appreciate that. Yes, we obviously went through a loss of some personnel based on the budget cut from 2 years ago. We lost 23% of our personnel. And with that, we also went from being on campus, which at all of our high schools, to now off-campus model, of safe passages throughout the district. So between that 23% cut and understanding that the officers, for the most part, on the high schools are off campus, and understanding that we have right now about one officer for every 11 square miles that are out there on a daily basis, you can understand that there is a chance of a delay. However, what we do is when a school does call, our police dispatchers that I just mentioned, they will triage and ask some questions about, what is the nature of this request. If it's an emergency, we are going. If it's an administrator that is requesting us and they have an issue or an incident, we will dispatch a unit. In those circumstances, we will have a unit respond immediately, and if we believe we're going to have a delay that could be more than 5 to 7 minutes, we will contact the agency, police agency within that area to have them respond. In most cases, during the day, on any school emergency, we have been able to provide that service and a response as needed. And if we get to the campus and we determine that perhaps it may not be something that we need to follow up on in a police way, then we will assist in helping to find the resources. So even though we are no longer on campus, we still provide the services as needed, and there may be a delay in situations that involve a non-emergency. So that is correct. And as we continue to rebuild and bring more officers on board, which we're in the process of doing now, we will slowly and gradually be able to attend to some of those other calls in a more timely manner.
Okay, last
That
question.
answer your question?
No, thank you for that. And I know it's not that I'm a big, police has to respond, but because of COVID and the mental space that some of our children are in, sometimes they need the extra outside support to help restrain, to help calm down, whatever may be the need. So I'm just looking, there's just a lot of things going on with our children now because of COVID. Mentally, we've had some breakdowns. Teachers are trying to handle it, but it's a lot. It's a big responsibility. But so thank you for that answer.
Sure.
I love the anger management program for K through 3. What do we have for our middle school students for that same thing? Because I'm seeing that is a major component with anger for a variety of reasons. And also, we used to have the DARE program. Is something similar in the school with fentanyl on the rise? I know we have the Narcan being distributed, but what kind of program will we start in the middle school or elementary to make sure our students are making wise choices?
Thank you for that question. So for our middle schools, and once again, we were at selected middle schools prior, but since the budget cut, one thing that we are also engaged in, and it was more robust obviously before the pandemic, and we are trying our best to re-engage that with, the amount of personnel that we could have toward it, and that is something called the RAMS program, Ready and Able for Middle School. And essentially what that program is we actually would connect with and through usually PSA counselors, like with a regular mentoring program we have now. And they would identify, and we would try to, certain students that we, maybe on a trajectory of going the wrong way, something that it's nothing for punitive, it's to help mentor and coach and encourage. So often what we did in the past, and we're trying to re-engage this program, was to connect with these kids in 5th grade, about halfway through their 5th grade year, and go to mentoring sessions twice a month with them, and then follow them into the first semester of middle school and help them get acclimated and follow through with that. It was very successful. It's unfortunate we had to cut that program along with many other programs because of the unfortunate, budget restraints that we have now. But besides that, we do have officers that are always available and have mentored many of our kids. We had a volunteer wrestling program that we did for years that was part of that mentoring program as well. And then lastly, as part of our strategic plan, we are going to reintroduce our Explorer program beginning in the new school year 23-24. So that's going to be a program where we actually have a summer session for our kids. And then after summer and the regular school starts, we have officers that after school volunteer their time for these kids to be part of the Explorer program. Hope that answered your question.
Ms. Salazar.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for everything you do to keep our students and our schools safe. Was really impressed with the training and would love to learn more about the curriculum that you use, so we'll probably follow up after. Huge fan of the diversion work that you're doing. It's just so smart to partner with the Health and Human Services, the PSA counselors, to get to the root cause of why young people are having to have interactions with school police. That's just fantastic. You mentioned that for the LACER program, which is also very exciting, that there's about 3,000 downloads so far. What's your goal for the program? What's sort of your vision? How big do you want this to become? How many downloads? Because we'd really like to be a part of kind of promoting the application. I think it's a great idea.
That's a great question, and I think as we continue with this program and continue to monitor the download activity, what we also want to try to gauge right now is how many of these calls are something that could be funneled through other resources that we mentioned, but right now I think our goal would be, as that is with our strategic plan anyway, is to be able to encourage and have our ability to have outreach through our social media platforms, which would include the use of LACER, by at least 2 to 3% by the end of the year, end of the school year. And of course, the more we present and have these type of posters, the more we continue to put out there on our social media platforms, and the more that is discussed, during principal meetings and coffee with a principal and getting the word out there, whether it's 3,000 or 6,000, our goal will be to make sure we handle all of them and to properly be able to respond and provide the services needed.
Great, thank you. We'd love to assist with getting the word out on that. And the last thing, if I could just take a moment, I would just publicly thank Chief Zipperman for your years of service. We've been doing work together for many, many years, and it's so good to see you. Thank you for everything that you do.
He tried to retire. No, I mean, given the hour in the committee, I want to acknowledge two things. One, the whole presentation. I appreciate, Chief Zipperman, you mentioning the collaboration with other entities. I know that, not only does the district serve such a large geographic swath, but sometimes the protocols for responding to something like an active shooter are different between the sheriff and the school police and LAPD. And I know you've been leading an effort kind of interagency to align, because that can be obviously very problematic and unfortunately fatal if one response is exit the classroom and the other is. So I just appreciate the work you're leading on that. And then also, into the question from Ms. McCoy earlier, I appreciate your help in us analyzing. One of the things we've done with schools in my district is look at the calls for school police and try to understand how many of those are really for police versus that is the crutch that people have leaned on for so many years, and where is it more helpful for the school and for your force, given limited resources, for us to call others. And so I hope both of you are doing that more district-wide. I mean, I think that there's, and I know this was a conversation that came up a lot during the conversations in 2020 was, police are going where they are called. And they're called for a lot of things that are out of the scope of what we would say is traditionally police. And so, it's one thing to just vilify the police, but it's another thing to say, okay, let's analyze these calls and why. And is it because we're just not training school staff to call SHHS or MET or someone else? And so I think it could be helpful even maybe for a future committee meeting to analyze or to look at some of those calls and data, because I think it's about changing habits. And maybe you call the counselor, maybe you call the nurse, maybe you call the child's parent as opposed to calling police, because you'll go where you're called, that's your job. But how do we make it easier so then when we actually really do need the school police, they're not previously disposed, but also that we can start to build that capacity among our schools. So just 2 points that I want to acknowledge the leadership of you both in doing that and suggest kind of future conversations.
Ms. Borro, go ahead, please.
Hello, thank you. I am a daughter of an officer, so I have so much esteem. My mom was a robbery homicide rape and investigation detective for LAPD, so shout out. And here I come again with suggestions after listening. So I see that we have our hierarchy for behavior supports, and just tonight I've heard, here I am looking at my notes again, 988. I should memorize it by the end of the night. But I'm thinking, what can we do for school staff, parents, and students that's a visual that says, if it is mental health related, the same way we have these amazing examples for our tier, how can we make it visual so that it goes across all language abilities, all learners, and all adult levels of age, so that they know this is when I call 911, this is when I should call 988, and this is when I can defer to a community rep or another liaison on campus. Not saying to put it on you, just a suggestion so that we can all be on the same page and have a quick reference. Because as we know, in the moment, the last thing that you're thinking about is the graphic. So if we can make the graphic more consumable, then we know what to do in the face of emergency. So thank you for listening to my comment/suggestion.
Hello. I would also like to make a suggestion about utilizing student leaders, especially the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, or even board district student councils, on distributing information like on the LASAR app, because I know a bunch of student leaders who would love to present and kind of take that bulk work off of you. We're a great resource to distribute information to students, and especially since students tend to be more receptive towards information that other students are giving them. So that's just my suggestion. Thank you.
We're going to take you up on that. Thank you.
And just 2 comments from me. First of all, what I am most fearful of and always have been are active shooters at school. And I just feel that the school needs to be trained to know what to do during recess, during lunch, and during a classroom period. I've been working with our superintendent to make sure that all of our rooms can be locked from the inside. And that's not true at all schools, but we're getting there. To be able to lock the door without having to open the door and lock it from the outside and close it again, that's not how it should work. But training that everyone at the school knows what to do. At recess in an elementary school, should the kids run around? Should the kids lay flat on the ground? Should the kids run to the nearest room? It has to be automatic. It has to be automatic, and that's the training that we need. So I hope we'll keep that in mind for safety.
That actually, in large part, is in place when we talk about, for example, like our lockdown drills. We encourage administrators to have lockdown drills under less than ideal circumstances. And what I mean by that is, it's easy to have a lockdown drill if it's the middle of second period and everybody's just sitting in their room, and all you do is you close the door and you go on about your business. The best practice is to have it during nutrition, to have it during lunch, maybe even, if you really want to push it, immediately after dismissal, and say, if this situation, God forbid, happened in this scenario, what would you do?
Got it. Let me just comment, last one, about discipline. I have to speak in behalf of our teachers and our administrators. School is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to learn, and school is enjoyable. But there has to be discipline at school. There has to be discipline at school. And how you do it is the key. My advice to all my teachers has always been to communicate with parents. Don't ever keep a kid after school when that mom is waiting outside in the car blowing her horn. Never keep kids after school without letting the parents know. My best advice, call the parents and say, tomorrow, I'd like to keep your son after school because this is what he did. Parent knows, parent usually will agree with that, as long as they know ahead of time. So work with the parents, and that's how discipline actually happens in a positive light. So that's just my comment. So thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation. Thank you, everybody. And I know Mr. Melvoin is going to give us a
Well, just a quick acknowledgement. I want to thank, yes, that Sophie Ryan is here, and Ms. Ryan's one of our incredible PSAs. And I know a lot of school safety and student safety starts with our pupil services and attendance counselors, but she's also been a leader in supporting students, our LGBTQ plus students, and she reminded me that actually this coming Friday is National Day of Silence, which is a national student-led demonstration where LGBTQ plus students and allies all around the country, and really all around the world now, take a vow of silence to protest the harmful effects of harassment and discrimination of our LGBTQ plus students in schools, which unfortunately we're seeing more and more of every day in this country. And so we're a couple days early, but I thought we'd just take a very brief moment of silence to show our support, and hopefully folks will learn more. So thank you, Mr. Schmelzen, and thank you, Ms. Ryan, for your leadership on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Melvoin. Okay, well, we've come to the end of our trail, so once again, I'd like to thank our district staff and our presenters and our panel members for their hard work and dedication to our students and the families of LAUSD. And just so you know, our next and last meeting will be on Wednesday, June the 7th at 5 o'clock. I really like this committee, by the way, so I'm kind of sad it's the last one, but it will be on June the 7th at 5 o'clock. I also like my special ed committee, don't get me wrong. I don't want any letters. I like both of my committees. So now we're going to have public comment. Would you help us, Mr. McLean?
My pleasure. I just want to remind everyone there is but a single way to give public comment remotely, and that's by calling 213-338-8477. And if you didn't have a pen handy at the time that I said that, you can go to boe.lausd.net to see how to sign up. That's just for remote participation. You can always attend in person and give your 3-minute public comment. As our first person is Brendan Ulrich. Come on up. You'll have 3 minutes to speak once you begin.
Good to stretch. So good evening, everyone. As Mr. McLean mentioned, my name is Brandon Aldridge. I am Senior Community School Coordinator at ISEF Public Schools. And to spell that out, Mr. Smerlson stepped out, not under the acronym, but ISEF stands for Inner City Education Foundation. We operate 7 charter schools in Los Angeles. LAUSD is an authorizer for 6 of those, and we have another elementary school in the city of Inglewood. So I am here on behalf of our board, our CEO, Parker Hudnut, our proud principal of View Park Preparatory High School, Mr. Dwayne Washington, the brilliant scholars at View Park, and our families who are our partners. This is a family and community engagement committee. So as our authorizers, we wanted to kind of just keep you guys abreast of some of the great work, some of the best practices that are going on at our school, being that you guys have blessed us with the ability to operate under your jurisdiction. So I prepared, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was this many of you guys. I have documents for you guys, but I wanted to invite you guys. I know Mr. Melvoin, you've been to one of our campuses, Vista, I believe, but I wanted to invite you guys to a couple of our family and community engagement events to see some of the amazing and actively engaging ways we engage our families and our communities. As you guys know, I'm sure you're aware, California has made the single largest investment in the community schools model, which is $4.1 billion. And like LAUSD, ISEF jumped on it immediately. So in my role, I'm tasked with the implementation of the community school strategies and models at all 7 of our schools. So I only have a minute left, but tomorrow, I know you guys' schedules are really impacted, but these are a few ways that we really actively engage our families. At View Park Middle School, we have our annual oratorical contest. So that's in here. We have our 11th annual ISEF Art Show coming up on April 26th. I'll be the MC of that, so I'd love to see you there. I also have our Embrace the Mind newsletter, right, which is something that we are really proud of, right? It's taking into account the social and emotional wellness of not only our students, our teachers, but also our families. So take a look at that. And then this one was my favorite. I think is it monthly? I think it's monthly. As a part of our Embrace the Mind curriculum and department, we have a Grown Up in Me cooking demonstration. That's virtual. It was born out of COVID. The recipe is in here for all you guys. So this one is actually French-style breakfast muffins. Okay, so you guys missed the virtual session, but I still provided you with the recipe and the instructions. Just don't have the ingredients for you. So just wanted to give you guys a little tidbit of some of the things we do at ISEF View Park Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Veronice Miron, you're signed up, but you're not on the line in front of me. Maria Palma, I see you're on the line. Please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Ms. Maria Palma, I see that you are on the line. Press *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak once you begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Maria Luisa Palma. LAUSD has a severe parent engagement problem. The presentations made by PCS tonight create a glossy appearance of a welcoming environment. But the reality for parents that seek to influence school and district actions through formal committees, true engagement is very different. There is a double standard in your culture. In practice, we observe that parents who go along with administrator wishes and act as rubber stamps to keep public funds flowing in are provided free range to comment, discuss, and propose, while those of us who challenge, engage in difficult conversations, and bring different perspectives to the table are chastised by your staff with quotes from your operating norms and code of conduct. Your first norm states, I will keep students a priority in making decisions. In practice, this is thrown around to silence inconvenient discussion topics. Minor students are unable to make legal decisions for themselves and therefore are unable to make educational decisions. Parents and guardians must make these decisions for their children. This is a point most parents hold dear as core or faith-based values. Therefore, committee decisions must also maintain parent rights and engagement as a priority. Yet, this perspective is not respected, allowed for discussion, or included in your operating norms. Norm number 3 states, I believe that we can agree to disagree and that there is more than one solution to a problem. In practice, alternative information brought forth by parents who seek to make authentic and potentially transformative positive changes to student outcomes are routinely shut down by your staff. Isn't the reason parent committees exist under the spirit and the letter of state law as a required venue for parents to officially discuss and opine on district plans and use of public funds? Your operating norms are used to effectively violate parents' constitutional First Amendment rights by abridging our freedom of speech and our right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Case in point, at this morning's DLAG bylaws subcommittee, selected parent recommendations were added to proposed bylaws by PCS staff. Others were obfuscated, effectively denied by PCS staff. There was a clear bias when your staff allowed proposals of provisions which limit parent engagement and ignore proposals which would promote parent engagement. This is just one example which occurred today. You get the behaviors you reward. Take a hard look at district culture and objectively ask yourself which behaviors you promote and reward. You must revise your policies and culture to require district staff to promote true parent inclusion and diversity of thought. Otherwise, your entire committee system is just a sham designed to keep public funds flowing through without accountability to parents and the public.
Thank you for your time. Let's see. Norma Gonzalez, I saw you were on the line, but you are no longer there. So we will go to, looks like Diana Guillen. Diana Guillen, if you're on the line, please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Diana Guillen.
¿Sí me escuchan?
Sí, se escucha.
Oh, gracias.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Diana Guillen, and I have been the chairperson for the DLAC committee in the last 4 years. And today I was hearing with these presentations that there are more than 13,000 calls for mental health. But unfortunately, the solution that you are presented to parents are social services. And those types of things, we as parents, we feel that it's retaliation, not as people that want to help us. Our community is weak and our community needs the true support. And not just that we are intimidated so that they bring to social services with the threat of taking away our children. I also want to say that and call upon Mr. Melvoin because I would like to have a meeting with him because I do feel very harassed and intimidated with Mr. Plasencia because in the meeting for the committee meetings, he has silenced my voice. He has taken away my role as a chairperson, and he has harassed or told other parents to harass me just because I show my disagreement and for being against the policy that he has presented. Right now, he is presenting that he helps all parents, but in reality, in the committee that is more informed, he wants to silence our voice. And also, I am very concerned because the Parent Center for Community in the district now has a changed name. Now it's called Student, Family, and Community Engagement, which is where are us as parents? Who made that decision? Mr. Plasencia? And so I think, Mr. Melvoin, that you should really get involved in the matter because today I also presented a few things for our bylaws, and Ms. Reina Diaz, all of my work that I did, I studied the law and I started to see how to improve the schools. That lady said that I could not present that because why? Because we parents were so ignorant that they would not understand what I was presenting. I think that that is lack of respect, that they only want us to present, that they are comfortable and happy with the parents that just repeat what they say. And they're not comfortable with those parents that criticize, that make the difference, mark the difference, and that think for ourselves and that think differently. And I think that for the point, I think I want to make responsible to Mr. Antonio for all of the harassment and all the stress that he is causing me because he wants to silence my voice. In the next agenda planning meeting, they said not to do the minutes, that in every single minutes because he doesn't want everything to be written down that they did to me in the last meeting. And also he
Thank you very much for
takes
your
away
time.
my voice.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, let's see. Maria Duran, are you on the line? I see that you are not. Dora Vasquez. Dora Vasquez, if you're on the line, please press *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes to speak once you begin. Dora Vasquez.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes. ¿Me escuchan?
Sí, se escucha.
Gracias.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Members of the board, my name is Dora Vasquez. And as a mother of a student in LAUSD, I am here to say that there is no strong relations between schools and parents. Almost 30 days ago, I said to you that the parents at Vermont School, we are going through a lot of neglect on behalf of the school leadership. And it is the greatest problem. As you know, we have come as parents to tell you about our experiences and how this neglect has affected our students. And also we shared with this board a list of signatures of almost 100 parents that we are not pleased with the work of the principal. Patricia Ferguson, but we continue to be ignored. And about the questions that were asked to Mr. Plasencia on how they are ensuring that all of these resources and information is getting to the schools, and if all these supports are getting to all of the schools, or the support only go to Title I schools, to which Mr. Plasencia said that all of the schools, the resources get there through the CENI funds. But as a parent, I can assure you that this has not happened, because in each single school, there's ELAC committees where we can read the school plan, and it is the SPSA, and there is written how the students should be receiving the supports or resources, but it's everything but. They are denied the resources. The parents are denied the information and resources, including the principal at Vermont says that the district does not give her enough funds to cover these needs. Thank you to Ms. Yolanda Matoy and Jenna Schwartz for asking these questions to the parent engagement officer, Mr. Plasencia, and his team, but you should supervise the school closely because of what is happening, including Vermont School, where Mr. Plasencia is witness to the neglect that we have been suffering as parents in the school, and we are still awaiting the answer from Mr. Salcida to the reports that were made on March of this year, 2023. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Maria Duran, you are not on the line. Mr. David Tokovsky, you are also not on the line, though you are signed up. Antonietta Garcia, you are signed up, but you are not on the line. And let's see, Marquisadet Absalon, you just signed up, but you are also not on the line. And Sophie Ryan, you are here in person. Yeah. Come on up.
Before my time comes up, I want to answer a question that was placed during the meeting, because I am a PSA counselor, and the issue came up about how do we promote 988? How do schools know? So briefly, Pia Escudero has been doing a magnificent job promoting resources. So any parent that needs to know information of emergency contacts, you just go to the LAUSD website and to SHH, and you will see right there emergency information and after school services. So we have also taken advantage of Instagram and Facebook. The cue is connect. We have the information in all the LAS schools account for Instagram. Follow that. Follow your local district Instagram account and Facebook account. Follow your school's Instagram account or Facebook account, and your board members' accounts in Instagram, Facebook, and social media. They promote all the commemorations. PIA also has the School Health and Human Services. So are we ready to promote and continue working on that? Yes. The magic word here is connection. Many people tell me, but I don't like that. I don't like Instagram. I don't like Facebook. We need to connect. How are you going to get the information? Just open the account for that. You're going to get hooked, and you're going to do other things, believe me. The information is available, and we have PSA counselors in school sites. They have been promoting 988, 911, LA County, all the services in the communities. Please take advantage of your PSWs, PSAs, school nurses, Healthy Start navigators, and your administrators, because unfortunately, we don't have one PSA, PS counselor in each one of the school sites. Your administrators, just keep connecting, because you're going to hear this information en el cafecito con el director. You're going to hear this information when you go to the page. Connect, and you will receive the information. So my two leaders. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So that is about thanking Mr. Mailbone for taking the lead in helping us to continue promoting safe schools. Safe schools start with providing LGBTQ youth, family, and staff with a welcoming environment. People know that need to know that many students have been missing school because they don't feel safe. They don't want to be bullied, ridiculed, or they just don't feel the freedom to be themselves. So thank you, Mr. Mailboin. Thank you, Jackie Goldberg. Thank you, Mr. Schmederson, for your support.
Thank you for your time. Let me double check and make sure there aren't other folks who logged on at the last minute, because public participation is essential. There are no other folks online at this time. The meeting is back to you.
Thank you, everyone, and we'll be here next month for our next meeting and last meeting. Thank you so much for participating and staying here. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.